my husband, Ken, and I built our family home together when we got married. It was the biggest thing I've ever bought. We decided to enjoy our new home together. But I've already thrown away all your things. I never expected our home to be taken away like this. Ken and I got married 3 years ago and built our house right after. We've been paying off the mortgage ever since. I remember the smell of the new house and the sight of my sweet husband. The big living room, with sunlight coming through the windows, was everything we dreamed of. Since we built the house, Ken listened to my ideas, especially about the kitchen and window placements. On Sundays, around 2 p.m., the sunlight comes in perfectly, and Ken and I relax, maybe even nap. I love brewing coffee with delicious beans, filling the house with a warm, comforting smell. These simple moments are my happy place. But honestly, it took a lot of effort to make this happen. I'm really glad I've been working hard. When we got approved for the mortgage, I felt proud of my hard work, and Ken did too. However, about a month after we moved into our new house, my mother-in-law, Pam, who lived alone, called me. "You and Ken built a house, right? Now that it's done, I'd like to move in with you. If I stay in my old house, I'll get sick." Pam is single and lives on welfare. We weren't very close, so I wasn't happy about her wanting to live with us so soon after our marriage. Ken said, "I know Anna, and I can see how having my mother live with us could be hard. I'll tell her no." "Okay, thank you," I replied. Ken understood how I felt, so he told Pam she couldn't move in with us. Then, 2 years later, when we had our first baby, Pam thought it was a good time to ask again. "Isn't it hard to take care of the baby and do house chores by yourself? If I move in, I can help with both. Please let me live with you." It was true that caring for the baby and doing housework was tough, and I could use the help. I was also planning to go back to work, so it would be nice to have more help. "Well, what do you think?" Ken asked. "I think it might be helpful to have someone around," I said. "Well, if Pam promises to help, then..." Pam was really happy when I agreed, and she moved in, saying she'd help with the baby and chores. For the first week, Pam kept her word. She did the laundry, helped with the baby, and took care of the house. I was surprised and even felt bad for doubting her. I was grateful for her help. But after that first week, things changed. Pam started slacking off. When Ken wasn't home, she would relax and not look after our son, even though I asked her to. This happened a lot, and I started to lose trust in her. She wasn't doing her chores or taking care of the baby properly. I didn't want to keep asking her to do things if she wasn't going to help. Ken tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't listen. "I'm doing my best too. Anna's just being too strict," Pam would say. But Ken would remind her, "You need to help us out. That's why you're living here." Pam would cry or blame me when Ken talked to her, trying to make him feel guilty. She stayed with us, even though she wasn't helping. Over time, Pam became annoyed with the baby, and things got worse. "Oh no, he's crying again. He's so loud. Come on, hurry up and make him stop crying." Not only does Pam not take care of our son, but I also feel worried whenever she's around him. "Honey, I'm really scared to let our son be around Pam like this. I want her to leave our home as soon as possible." "Okay, I understand. I'll find her a new place so she can move out." Ken decided to rent an apartment for Pam, hoping it would make her leave our house. Soon, our living room was filled with her things. I have to hold our son all the time now, because it's dangerous with Pam's stuff around. We've already told her to stop, but she hasn't changed. We'll make her leave for sure. Then, something happened. "Oh no, where is he? Where is our son?" I panicked when I couldn't find him in his room, and then I saw Pam outside with him. "What are you doing? Why did you take our son out without asking us first?" "I just wanted to show off my grandchild a bit." "Do you have any idea how worried I was? If something happened, people could blame us. You shouldn't just take him like that without asking." I couldn't believe Pam had taken our son without saying anything to me. She didn't even seem sorry about it and instead got mad when I yelled at her. Ken was furious too, so we decided right then that Pam had to leave our home. A year passed, and our son turned 1 and started walking a little. Then, something tragic happened. Ken was in an accident on his way home from work and passed away. I couldn't believe it. Why did he have to go? What am I going to do with our son, who's so small? I was heartbroken and couldn't stop crying at Ken's funeral. Then, Pam came up to me. "Hi, Anna, I didn't think we'd meet like this again." "Oh, Pam." Pam had lost her son, and I knew that must hurt deeply. I tried to hold back my tears and be strong for both of us. It's all so sudden. I know, but since the house belongs to my son, I should get it, right? And the furniture too? Excuse me? Wait, what is she talking about? I was shocked. I thought we were both mourning Ken, but instead, Pam started talking about the house, the furniture, and other things that seemed completely out of place at that moment. I couldn't believe what Pam was saying. Even if she thought she should get the house, it cost around $500,000 to build, and there's still a mortgage to pay. Even if that's true, what about the mortgage? Oh, you're going to pay that, right? Excuse me? Why is she saying this now? I couldn't believe Pam was bringing up the house at Ken's funeral. I don't think we should talk about this right now. We're at Ken's funeral. But this is important. Not now. Anyway, I'll get the house, right? How could she be so pushy? Pam seemed to want me to confirm that I'd give her the house, but with everything going on, I was getting frustrated with her. That's it. Enough, Pam, we're at Ken's funeral. If you keep acting like this, please leave. When I said that firmly, Pam went quiet and walked away. What was she thinking, especially after losing her son? After everything with the funeral and cremation was over, I tried to calm down. I can't stay sad forever. I have to work hard for my son. So, I left my son at daycare and went back to work. My days were busy with work, house chores, and taking care of my son. Then one day, when I came home after picking up my son, I saw all my things piled up in the garbage near the entrance. What's going on here? My clothes, desk, and work things were all in the trash, but my expensive things like clothes, accessories, TV, and fridge weren't. Oh, great timing. You live here, right? Well, the cost of the move is... Huh? The mover explained that Pam had hired him. What is she trying to do? Was Pam in my house? I tried to go inside, but the front door wouldn't open. Did Pam change the locks? Maybe Pam had gotten my house key during all the chaos after Ken's death. I called Pam immediately. What's going on, Pam? Why did you come into my house without permission and throw out my things? What's wrong with me taking my own son's stuff? You're not family anymore, so get out. I'm sorry, what? Ken's not here anymore, so you're not family. Get out before I report you for trespassing. Then she just hung up on me. How selfish and messed up could she be? I had to get my house back. But my son started crying, and I couldn't stay outside forever. I decided to go to a hotel or my parents' house for now. I asked the movers to store my things temporarily, and I left. A week later, I got a call from Pam, sounding upset. The police came over, and it looks like they want me to leave the house, do something about it. How could she say this after kicking me out? Pam was being so selfish. Even if you say so, I'm not your family anymore, since I've gone through a post-mortem divorce settlement. What? Post-mortem divorce? Yeah, it's a process to end my relationship with my deceased husband's family. What? Since I'm still Ken's spouse, I'll inherit the house, but I've cut ties with you, and I don't have to let you live in my house or support you. Huh? You know I have nothing, and you're kicking me out? Yes, I did what you wanted. I'm not your family anymore. But I took care of your grandchild. You're so ungrateful, cold, and strict. Pam didn't seem to understand what she was doing wrong and just got angry instead. Pam's actions didn't surprise me at all. She didn't help take care of my son, so I didn't owe her anything. If you say that, then I have no choice. You can live there if you want. Oh, really? You said I could, right? I can really stay here? Yes, but you need to pay the mortgage in one lump sum. Excuse me? You don't need to worry about the part of the mortgage that's already been paid, just pay the remaining amount, but be warned, it's a lot. What? How am I supposed to pay off the mortgage on a house that was built only 3 years ago, all at once? If you can't, then the house is mine, and you, being no longer my family, should be reported for trespassing. I said that and hung up on her. By the way, since my husband had insurance, I didn't have to worry about paying the mortgage after he passed, but I didn't think I needed to tell Pam that. A few days later, I finally got back into the house. It was a mess, furniture was damaged, and my clothes were all messed up. I took photos of everything and documented the costs, including what I'd lost when Pam kicked me out. Even if I file a claim, there's a chance it will be ignored because Pam definitely couldn't pay the money back. but if she does anything else to me, I have proof I can use to shut her down. Then, Pam contacted me asking for a fine of $1,000 for trespassing, but of course, I ignored it. Didn't she understand I was the victim here? There was no way I'd pay that for her. 3 years later, Pam couldn't pay her fines and was found guilty. She was imprisoned for 3 years. Once she got out, Pam contacted me again. Please, I'm really in trouble, I have nowhere to go. It sounded like she was using a payphone, probably begging strangers for money to make calls. Her apartment, my husband had rented it for her when she had to leave, had been shut down. The house Ken and I built together had already been sold. I was worried about Pam coming back, but honestly, she got what she deserved. I wasn't responsible for her anymore. So, I told her to stop bothering me and to live her life on her own. After I hung up, she never contacted me again. That was the end of Pam. She never wanted to live on her own, but I'm determined to raise my son to be strong and independent, unlike her. As I thought about it, I placed my hand on a photo of Ken and my son. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
My name is Ivy, and the moment I learned about my cancer diagnosis, both my mother-in-law and husband turned their backs on me. Our marriage, which was supposed to endure sickness and health, crumbled when my husband Isaac realized that my time might be limited. He chose to run away and ghost me. Fortunately, I found solace in the unexpected support of my father-in-law, Theodore, who turned out to be the father-in-law of the century. At 31 years old, facing the devastation of cancer after a couple of challenging months was unexpected. However, what truly baffled me was the audacity of my mother-in-law, Georgia. Despite the vows of marriage, she compelled Isaac to abandon me, claiming there was no hope left. Such heartlessness is beyond comprehension. Georgia's monstrous side, rooted in an inflated sense of self-importance, always fueled her judgmental remarks. While economic differences between our families were not substantial, her family's additional wealth of around 500 created a sense of superiority. Beyond finances, our relationship faced the common misunderstandings found in any marriage. However, with my mother-in-law, these clashes escalated to toxic levels. She consistently mistreated me based on her misinterpretations, making it a painful experience, with Isaac occasionally attempting to mediate. The turning point came 7 weeks ago when I received the gut-wrenching cancer diagnosis. Initially, we tried to come to terms with it, but my mother-in-law's behavior became increasingly erratic and toxic. Her influence over Isaac grew, and her misinterpretations led to painful situations. A few days after sharing my diagnosis, she callously suggested Isaac move to the bedroom TV since I would soon be confined to bed, adding insult to injury. When I implored Isaac to address his mother's insensitivity, he initially complied, only to later join in her heartless laughter. He dismissed my feelings, asking me to chill out and take a joke. As they continued their classless jokes and mockery, even in the absence of Theodore, my father-in-law, I felt isolated and defenseless. Theodore, often away from home, preferred the company of friends, leaving me vulnerable to the mother-son duo's heartless antics. I endured their absurdities while grappling with my health struggles, a situation that would be almost comical if it weren't painfully real. Fortunately, we didn't have children, and as time passed, it became evident that Isaac was far from an ideal partner for parenthood. While not entirely monstrous, they occasionally lent a hand, often accompanied by backhanded comments and negativity. Drained and worn down, I couldn't summon the energy to wage wars or respond to hurtful words in my already burdened heart. The worst was yet to come, and it arrived on a day when Isaac was absent due to work commitments. As my health deteriorated, with regular bouts of sickness and loss of control over my senses, Theodore out of the house, it fell upon Georgia to handle the mess. While there were no jokes that day, her silent treatment spoke volumes, dispelling any doubts about her feelings towards me. Hint, she did not like me. It was evident she was growing tired of me, and the scariest part was that she didn't shy away from showing it. In desperation, I suggested hiring a nurse to lighten the load. You'd think it was a reasonable solution, but according to Georgia, Theodore had refused to even consider it in a conversation I was convinced she had never had with him in my presence. I couldn't help but believe that if he knew of my suffering, he wouldn't deny me help. However, according to Georgia, they were already taking care of me, and the nurse would be a waste of money. This wasn't an isolated incident, it happened multiple times. Despite living comfortably with her husband's money, when I needed genuine help, there was silence. To add insult to injury, she started encouraging Isaac to meet new people, by which she meant women, different women. Initially, I thought she wanted him to connect with those dealing with sick relatives like me, but I was wrong. Her ulterior motive was clear. She wanted him to get in touch with women to easily replace me. At first, Isaac played the role of the faithful husband, but slowly his behavior changed. Late nights out transformed into late-night phone conversations, audible as I drifted in and out of sleep. The gravity of the situation became painfully clear 2 weeks ago, in the middle of my afternoon nap. When I heard the front door open and then shut, followed by the murmur of multiple voices, mostly female, filling the living room, I knew Georgia was in the house. Isaac was at the office. It was just 9 days ago that one of these women returned, making it evident that her visit wasn't for me. She came to see Isaac. They stayed in the living room, seemingly acting decently, but my intuition sensed something was off. My suspicions were confirmed when Georgia left me alone, sneaking out of the house, assuming I was already asleep. I couldn't decipher what happened between them in that single hour, but I knew they were making plans that didn't include me. The peculiar thing was that this woman never visited me. She was always there for Isaac. 5 days ago, Georgia approached me, announcing that she had arranged for a nurse to take over my duties. I couldn't help but question her abrupt change of heart. Her response was absurd and infuriating. They were leaving me. When I pressed for an explanation, she casually answered that they needed space to accept that I would soon die. I was left dumbfounded. It made no sense. That wasn't a reasonable reaction to my situation. According to her logic, she had found a new woman for Isaac, someone perfectly healthy, as if my illness was repulsive. According to her, Isaac needed space to move on. How heartless could one person be? It was beyond comprehension, beyond any semblance of human decency. Their grand idea was to leave me on my own while they enjoyed their newfound freedom, not burdened by the responsibilities of caring for a sick person. Georgia had found a replacement for me, a potential wife for Isaac, who would conveniently step into my shoes the moment I passed away. The audacity of it all was staggering. She expected me to accept this fate because I was battling cancer, as if my diagnosis granted them the right to abandon me. I attempted to talk to Isaac about the situation, but he conveniently avoided me as much as possible. In the brief moments we spoke, he reassured me not to worry too much, and before I knew it, they were gone. Amidst these sudden developments, another strange occurrence took place. My father-in-law, who had always kept his distance, started calling and messaging me. The nurse stepped up, tending to my every need, from cooking to cleaning. Everything that Georgia and Isaac had promised but failed to deliver. Georgia initially paid for her, but eventually, the entire responsibility fell on my shoulders, and I started using whatever savings I had left to compensate her. Theodore, who had maintained his silence during the entire fiasco, now bombarded my phone with calls and messages. In sickness and in health, Isaac had promised, yet this was his response. He proved to be nothing short of trash. Now, I'm utterly curious about what my father-in-law wants. Surely he was not calling without reason. I'll update you with the top comments from the original post. Comment number 1. Look, I don't entirely want to side with your family, but it does kind of make sense why they took such big steps to preserve their own feelings. Losing somebody hurts, and I've lost several of my loved ones, and I still hate knowing them. Well, it would have saved me so much pain if I hadn't known them. Everybody has the right to defend themselves against that kind of pain. Your family was a little too extreme, though, and I'm really sorry for you. Cancer sounds bad enough. Maybe try contacting your own family. Where are they anyway? Comment number 2. It's a shame doing this isn't criminal. But the way your husband has behaved is disgusting. Forget your mother-in-law. Your husband is the biggest trash here. I wonder what your father-in-law wants, but maybe you should talk to him once as well. Maybe he wants to say something important. Update number 1. My father-in-law. And I had a conversation. And now we find ourselves living in the same neighborhood. He spent a fortune to rent the nearest home to where I currently live, away from his wife and son. Yeah, it might sound surprising, but after years of silence, he finally found the courage to speak up. 7 days ago, he reached out to me again, and I decided it was time to confront the truth. I realized that clarifying things with him once and for all would help the situation. I decided that if my family wanted to cut ties with me, I would not back down either. Dying alone would be much better than crying over crappy people like Georgia and Isaac. In the past 2 weeks, my health has continued to go down. I find myself bleeding profusely, and even the thought of food disgusted me. When he called, I mustered the strength to answer, ready to hear whatever he wanted to talk about. The moment I picked up the phone, he immediately apologized for staying silent for so long and did not shy away from accepting whatever his wife and son did to me as wrong. He confessed that he was not paying attention to what was going on at home, and then told me how shocked he was with their decision to abandon me. He found their actions utterly classless, crass, and intolerable, and no longer wanted to stay with them. That's why he reached out to me. Well, since I held no grudge against him and was in a desperate situation, I accepted him back into my life. At that point, I was far too tired to care much about the details, and so for the past 7 days, we've been living as neighbors. He comes over to check up on me 3 times a day and has also decided to take the responsibility of paying for my nurse with her weekly payments. But that's not really what is developing in these past weeks. There are a couple more things that happened. Allow me to explain. When the news of my father-in-law staying with me reached my mother-in-law and husband, they acted very swiftly. They reached out to him first, leaving voicemails, sending messages. They kept apologizing to him and then asked if he was upset with them. My father-in-law showed me every single message. It was comical to me because it was obvious why they were so desperate. They were heavily dependent on him and could not afford anything. My father-in-law getting upset at them. Well, it's not helping. But he remained silent, ignoring every call and message. Days turned into a week, and their desperation started to grow. Suddenly, they started bombarding me with phone calls and messages. At this time, neither the calls nor the messages stopped. Initially, their messages had been about little things, but now it was about them at my father-in-law's suggestion. I made a decision not to answer their calls or messages. Their newfound concern felt fake, and it was evident they did not care for me but for themselves. Who wants to play that game? I was sick, but I was not a doormat. Their desperation reached an absolute peak when they showed up at my door with a bag of fruits and lots of words of sympathy. Before my nurse or I could update them about my health, they started probing about my father-in-law's whereabouts. Since he was neither at my house nor theirs, I replied just as he had instructed me to in such a situation. I explained that his office was nearby, and staying here saved him extra cash he would be required to spend from the new place they stay at. They were not content with my response. Financially, they had always been well off, and my explanation likely did not fulfill their assumptions. Regardless, they accepted it at face value, seemingly uncaring whether it was true. They again asked me about my health, stayed some 5 more minutes at my home, and then told me that they needed to be somewhere important. But I did not care. I wanted them to leave already. She said they would leave in a while, and I was not sure what they wanted. But I hoped that they would have the sensibility to address what they had done to me. At the very least, I expected her to offer me an explanation for their actions. I assumed I could ask for that much, but sensibility was clearly beyond their grasp. Instead of doing any of that, my mother-in-law dropped the bomb while Isaac was in the kitchen. She revealed that Isaac was getting interested in the women he was seeing. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Even though I had sensed their intentions, I was not shocked that they had made these kinds of plans, as it was clear from the beginning. But that they were dead serious about going through with it was another matter. This was no elaborate joke. I was still alive. It had only been a little over a month since my diagnosis, and they were already going to such lengths to distance themselves. As one of my comments pointed out, is this how you defend yourself against the potential of getting hurt by isolating the person in need? The audacity of that woman knew no boundaries. And if that was not enough, she claimed that she had planned a few dates for Isaac and the other women. My nurse, bless her, tried to put an end to this cruel conversation, informing my mother-in-law that I needed rest. Then she mentioned her hopes that I might attend, quote, at least his engagement party. Yeah, the audacity rises. But she did not stop there. Oh no, she promised to send me the divorce papers on Isaac's behalf, indifferent to any response I might have. According to her, it was better to handle the paperwork before I lost my senses, as if I were on the brink of insanity. Yeah, her logic. It would save Isaac potential heartache, and the divorce would allow him to get over me quickly with this new woman by his side. My nurse, her eyes fixed on me, probably wondered how I was managing to endure such insanity. Yesterday, true to her promise, she sent the divorce papers, and Isaac had already signed them, along with a confirmation from his side indicating that he did not care about me at all. Although deeply hurt, I cannot say I was entirely surprised. I always knew what they were like. Instead of reacting impulsively, as I desperately wanted to, I waited. I waited to share this news with my father-in-law. When I told him about the divorce papers, he looked not just disgusted and disturbed but also betrayed. After spending countless years with his son and wife, he must have held out some hope for decency and compassion. Yet, he made a promise. He vowed to take his weekend off the next week, setting aside time for us to confront this legal nightmare together. I was not sure about his intentions, but facing a more stable person while I was dealing with my illness seemed like a better option than dealing with it on my own. Update number 2. He came over to my place and then told me that he had been thinking over some things for some time now. When I questioned him about what he meant, he introduced me to his lawyer dealing with our case. He informed me that his first words to the lawyer were that he had given enough time for his wife and son to come around, but since he saw no improvement in their behavior, he was going with the plan. And I knew what he was planning. On that particular weekend, he came to my home with his lawyer. I was excited about whatever he had in store. We began discussing the divorce situation, and then he dropped the news on me, the thing he said he had been contemplating for a while. He wanted to make changes to his will. Even with his lawyer attempting to discuss the matter seriously, he kept insisting that he had thought enough on the topic and did not want to think about it anymore. It took an entire day of intense discussions, but by the day's end, I found myself the sole heir to every possession that he owned. He had cut them out entirely, leaving them with nothing more than a small plot in a barren countryside, a worthless piece of land that had nothing around for miles and miles. I knew my father-in-law had just made their lives harder, and I thought that was the end of it. But then he surprised me again. He summoned another pair of lawyers, and they were discussing divorce. Yes, you read that right. It was no longer solely about me. My father-in-law was on the brink of making the most important decision of his life. He planned not only to strip his wife of everything, but also to divorce her overnight. He looked at me and asked if I was all right with divorcing Isaac. After everything Isaac put me through, I did not need to think twice about it. I responded firmly, stating that after all this betrayal, I would be a fool to stay with him. And just like that, it was settled. I was going to divorce Isaac, and my father-in-law was going to divorce his wife, Georgia, and there's no turning back. The lawyer suggested we wait at least a month before filing for divorce, so that it would not look too hurried and planned to the court. We just agreed to wait. While all this was going on in our homes, my mother-in-law kept badgering me to sign the divorce papers. Isaac's silence was less annoying than whatever she was doing. It was like she wanted to get rid of me. I hoped that in the days to come, she would have to deal with wilder consequences than Isaac. I tried to tell her off, giving my chemotherapy treatment as an excuse, hoping that she would stop. To some extent, it worked. She lowered the frequency of calling me, but her demands never ended. She even dared to send me a picture of the women she intended for Isaac, adding insults to the injury with her questioning, "Isn't she pretty for Isaac?" Care to explain to me if you would have dealt with something like that? However, all of her crafty behavior only made my father-in-law more determined. He never forgot to apologize for his wife's behavior, and in a mere 5 days, this month will end and both my mother-in-law and Isaac will receive the consequences of their actions. My mother-in-law will get a legal notice, and Isaac will receive those signed divorce papers he wants. If all goes according to plan, this would be the end of our interactions on all levels. Update number 3. The divorce bombshell shook Georgia's world. Much to my amusement, she had been prepared for many things, but not for this. Upon receiving the legal notice, she dropped a storm of calls on my father-in-law's phone. When he refused to answer, she stormed over to both our places, demanding an explanation. My father-in-law was at my place for his routine checkup, and he had no choice but to tell her the blunt truth in my presence. He was tired of her and had contemplated this step for a long time. It was clear why he preferred the company of his friends over staying at home with his wife. Immediately, she broke down almost on her knees. She pleaded with him not to leave, and it was at that moment that the reality had hit her. My father-in-law kicked her out of his life. Then Isaac barged in, and because his parents were divorcing, he was now worried about himself. He knew things were not going to end very well for him, and he promised me that he did not want a divorce. But his mother forced him to have it. I told him I didn't care. This entire mom-son drama went on for the whole day until they left in the evening, empty-handed and hopeless. The legal proceedings were progressing relatively smoothly, and just when it seemed like we were on the verge of closure, my father-in-law dropped the truth. He claimed to have nothing to his name. Despite this, the court still ordered him to pay a certain amount of money to Georgia each month. It was a financial loss for us, but my father-in-law was relieved to have finally cut her off from his life. Meanwhile, the issue with the will was yet to be out in the open, and the court admonished Isaac for abandoning me and told him to pay me alimony. We hoped that with everything settled, life would finally calm down, and I would be able to deal with my upcoming painful months in peace without any of their drama. However, our hopes were shattered when Georgia and Isaac unexpectedly showed up at my house for yet another meeting. During their unexpected visit, they came up with an idea, a negotiation of sorts, after they found out the truth about the will. If they had approached it differently, I might have felt sympathy, but they chose to be cruel. Georgia, in her typical manner, claimed that since I was not going to live long, it made no sense for me to hold so much property in my name. I just brushed off her words. I had already made a decision with my father-in-law. We knew what was going to happen as tensions escalated. Isaac, viewing my response as an insult to his mother, immediately thought of violence and raised his hand against me. My nurse immediately called the police, and by the time they arrived, the mother and son duo had fled the scene. Using my nurse and my father-in-law's witnesses, I asked for a restraining order. Given my fragile state due to my illness, it did not take long for the order to be issued. The court warned Isaac about his behavior, stating that repeating such actions would lead to an immediate charge, no questions asked. Since then, none of those two have contacted either of us, and honestly, considering my health, I don't care. The doctors gave me a time limit now, and I'm just hoping I prove them all wrong. Other than that, no new drama. I'm glad most of you were respectful enough. And yes, I might have liked a couple of dark jokes you played on me. By the way, I've got none, and that's why this entire thing was so hard for me. Top comments from the final update. Comment number 1. You're the literal definition of taking everything to the grave. LMNO. Hey, that's cool though. Your father-in-law's smart decision saved you big time because honestly, it's so rare to have that kind of thinking person around you. It's true that you may not live long, but the way your family reacted, wow, that was extreme. I'm glad I've never dealt with something like this. They're toxic as hell. At least they will die poor. Comment number 2. I'm so curious. Is the woman you're talking about? Didn't she, know that you're sick? How could one woman be so mean to another? I mean, where's the sisterhood? All for a dang man, and one that would not even stay faithful to the same woman he vowed to stay with for all his life. Like, wow. I'm so glad I like girls because honestly, this is too much for me. Good luck soon. I hope you win this war. Well, we just reviewed 2 of the comments, and I have to agree with the last one. I can't believe somebody would be so mean to somebody else, knowing that they were battling such an illness. But yet, OP had to deal with this mother-in-law of today's story that was an absolute nightmare. Lucky for OP, she did have her father-in-law who went so far to try to save her, get her back, give her support, and basically get her to cut out the toxicness, which was unfortunately his son and his wife. I want to know your thoughts on this one, guys. Go ahead, drop your comments down below. This one was an intense one. It had sad moments. It had exhilarating moments, but overall, it looks like karma came again. So drop your thoughts down below, guys. My name is Mr. Reddit. I narrate these sorts of stories every single day. If you guys want to be a part of these daily videos, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. Hit that like notification. And well, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.
The quarterly merger proposal spread across my desk required the kind of complex financial analysis that had made me the youngest partner in Morrison & Associates' 90-year history. Numbers that would reshape 2 Fortune 500 companies, employment for thousands of workers, and investment returns that could fund entire pension systems. Just another Tuesday morning in corporate law, where billion-dollar decisions were made between coffee refills. My assistant knocked on the office door, interrupting my review of the antitrust implications outlined in Section 47. Ms. Reynolds, your mother-in-law called. She wants to discuss the anniversary party arrangements. I set down my red pen and checked the time. Helen Parker Montgomery had been calling daily for 3 weeks about our 5th wedding anniversary celebration, micromanaging everything from the floral arrangements to the guest list. Most of her suggestions involved demonstrating why her son David had married beneath his social station. Did she mention anything specific? Something about upgrading the wine selection. She said the vintage you chose might not meet the expectations of the Montgomery family's social circle. The Montgomery family's social circle. A collection of old money families who measured success by how many generations their wealth had survived, rather than how much value they created. David's family had built their fortune in railroad investments during the 1920s and had been coasting on inherited prestige ever since. My intercom buzzed. Also, your husband called. He'll be working late again tonight. The Harrison Industries audit is taking longer than expected. David had been working extended hours for 3 months, ever since his accounting firm landed the massive audit contract. Helen blamed me for his demanding schedule, suggesting that a proper wife would ensure her husband prioritized family obligations over career advancement. The irony was rich. Helen spent her days organizing charity lunches and country club committees, while I managed legal strategies that affected international markets. But in her worldview, my career was a distraction from my real purpose of supporting David's success and producing Montgomery grandchildren. I returned to the merger documents, analyzing regulatory compliance requirements and potential shareholder conflicts. This deal would be featured in every major business publication, setting precedents for corporate restructuring that would influence similar transactions for years. The kind of work that required expertise Helen would never understand or appreciate. By 6 that evening, I was reviewing final contract revisions when David finally arrived home. Our house in Beacon Hill was elegant but understated, the kind of property that conveyed success without ostentation. Helen had criticized our choice, preferring something more traditional that would reflect the Montgomery family's established taste. "How was your day?" David asked, loosening his tie as he collapsed into the leather chair across from my desk. "Productive. We finalized the Morrison-Hartford merger terms. The closing should happen next month." David's eyes lit up. He might not fully understand the technical aspects of my work, but he appreciated its significance. "That's huge, Victoria. Congratulations." "Thank you. How's the Harrison audit progressing?" "Slowly. There are some irregularities in their subsidiary accounting that need careful review. I'll probably be working weekends for the next month." I could already hear Helen's reaction to that news. More complaints about David's demanding schedule, more subtle suggestions that I should convince him to prioritize family time over professional obligations. "Speaking of family time," David continued, "Mother called about the anniversary party. She has some additional thoughts about the arrangements." "Such as?" "She thinks we should serve champagne instead of wine during the toasts. Something about the symbolic importance of celebrating milestone marriages appropriately." Helen's symbolic improvements always seemed to involve more expensive choices that would demonstrate proper Montgomery family standards. Champagne instead of wine, orchids instead of roses, musicians instead of a playlist. "Whatever makes her happy," I said, though we both knew nothing would make Helen completely happy. My existence in David's life was a constant reminder that he'd chosen love over strategic marriage within their social circle. "Victoria, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret not having a traditional wedding?" Mother mentioned that some of her friends still talk about how quickly we got married, how simple the ceremony was. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. David was genuinely kind, supportive of my career, and completely oblivious to his mother's systematic campaign to undermine our marriage. He had no idea that Helen regularly suggested he'd settle for someone beneath his station. "I regret nothing about our wedding," I said firmly. "We married for the right reasons, and that's what matters." What David didn't know was that I'd insisted on a prenuptial agreement before we married. Not because I doubted our relationship, but because I understood exactly what kind of family I was marrying into. Helen's initial reaction to our engagement had made it clear that she viewed me as a temporary inconvenience, rather than a permanent family member. The prenup negotiations had been handled by my personal attorney, separate from David's family lawyers. Helen didn't know it existed, probably assuming that David would never consider such an arrangement with someone from my modest background. She was wrong about many things, but especially about the balance of power in our marriage. The anniversary party was scheduled for Saturday evening in our home's garden. Helen had convinced David that a public venue would be too impersonal for such an important milestone, though I suspected she preferred the control that hosting at our house would give her. By Thursday, the preparations were in full swing. Helen arrived early that morning with her interior designer, rearranging furniture and replacing my carefully chosen flower arrangements with more elaborate alternatives. "Victoria, darling," she said, examining my dress selection hanging in the bedroom closet, "don't you think something more formal would be appropriate? This is a Montgomery family celebration, after all. A Montgomery family celebration. As if David and I were incidental guests at our own anniversary party. I think the dress I chose is perfectly appropriate, Helen." "Of course, dear. I just want everything to reflect well on David. You understand." I understood exactly what she meant. Helen wanted everything to demonstrate that David had maintained family standards despite his unfortunate choice in wives. "The Vanderbilts will be attending," Helen continued. along with the Ashfords and the Whitman family. They're all very traditional about these matters. Traditional about these matters meant they were all very judgmental about David's marriage to someone whose father was a public school teacher rather than a trust fund manager. I'm sure they'll find the celebration adequate, I replied. Helen's smile tightened. Adequate wasn't the impression she wanted to make on her social circle. She'd spent weeks planning an event that would prove David's marriage hadn't diminished his family's standing. Friday evening brought the final preparations. Catering staff arranged tables in the garden, while Helen supervised every detail with the intensity of a military commander. She transformed our intimate outdoor space into something resembling a country club formal event. The flowers are perfect, she declared to the florist. Exactly the level of elegance the Montgomery name requires. David appeared beside me as we watched his mother orchestrate the preparations. She's really outdone herself this time. She certainly has strong opinions about how our anniversary should be celebrated. Mother just wants everything to be special for us. I didn't respond. Helen wanted everything to be special for David, with minimal consideration for my preferences or comfort. But David couldn't see the distinction because he'd grown up assuming that his happiness was everyone's primary concern. Saturday arrived with perfect weather and Helen's complete satisfaction with the arrangements. By 7 that evening, guests were arriving in expensive cars and designer clothing, exactly the audience Helen had curated to witness Montgomery family success. I greeted guests in the cocktail dress I'd originally selected, despite Helen's disapproving glances. Conversations flowed around topics like vacation homes in the Hamptons, children's private school placements, and investment strategies for preserving generational wealth. Victoria called Margaret Ashford, approaching with her husband Charles. What a lovely celebration. You and David look so happy together. Margaret had always been polite to me, though her tone suggested surprise that David's unconventional marriage had lasted 5 years. Charles nodded approvingly while scanning the party arrangements with the eye of someone evaluating social status. Thank you, Margaret. We're grateful to have friends like you celebrating with us. 5 years, Charles mused. Time really does fly. And you're both doing so well professionally. He said it with genuine warmth, but I noticed Helen approaching from across the garden with the purposeful stride that usually preceded her most pointed observations. Charles, Margaret, Helen said, joining our conversation circle. I'm so glad you could be here to celebrate David's anniversary. He's accomplished so much professionally, and it's wonderful to see him building on the Montgomery family legacy. David's anniversary, as if I were merely an observer rather than an equal participant in our marriage. David has certainly established himself as one of the city's premier accountants, Margaret replied diplomatically. The Harrison Industries audit is a tremendous opportunity, Helen continued. Exactly the kind of high-profile work that establishes reputations in our social circle. Our social circle. Helen's careful language always excluded me from family achievements, while including me in any potential embarrassments. More guests gathered as Helen warmed to her favorite topic, David's success and promising future. She discussed his career trajectory, his investment strategies, and his continued commitment to Montgomery family values. Of course, she said, her voice carrying across the garden, maintaining family standards becomes more challenging when marriages cross social boundaries. Some adjustments require more patience than others. The conversation around us quieted. Helen had perfected the art of delivering insults disguised as general observations, making it difficult to respond without appearing defensive. Helen, I said calmly, could you be more specific about which adjustments you're referring to? She smiled with the satisfaction of someone who'd successfully maneuvered their opponent into an uncomfortable position. "Oh, nothing critical, dear. Just the natural learning curve that comes with adapting to established family expectations." David appeared at my side, sensing tension, but not understanding its source. "Mother, are you talking about work schedules again? Victoria and I have everything balanced perfectly." "I'm talking about broader compatibility issues, David. Some people naturally understand what's expected in families like ours, while others require more guidance." The circle of guests exchanged glances. Helen's meaning was transparent to everyone except David, who still believed his mother's criticisms were motivated by concern rather than prejudice. "What kind of guidance?" I asked, maintaining my professional composure despite the public nature of Helen's attack. "Well," Helen said, glancing around to ensure she had an adequate audience, "I think it's obvious that David deserves someone who truly complements his background and aspirations. Someone from a family that understands the responsibilities that come with the Montgomery name." The garden fell quieter as nearby conversations stopped. Helen had crossed from subtle disapproval into direct insult, publicly questioning my worthiness as David's wife at our own anniversary celebration. "Helen," David started, but she held up her hand. "Let me finish, darling. I've watched this marriage for 5 years, hoping that time would bridge the gap between your wife's background and our family's standards. But some differences are simply too fundamental to overcome." She turned to address me directly, her voice carrying the authority of someone delivering a final verdict. "You're not good enough for my son. He deserves someone from a better family, someone who can truly appreciate what the Montgomery name represents." The silence that followed was complete. 30 guests stood frozen in our garden, witnessing Helen's public declaration that I was unworthy of my own marriage. David's face had gone white with shock and embarrassment. "Mother," he whispered, "you can't say things like that." "I can say what everyone here is thinking," Helen replied. "David, you're a Montgomery. You could have married anyone. Instead, you chose someone who will never truly fit into our world, no matter how hard she tries." I looked around at the faces of our guests. Some appeared embarrassed by Helen's cruelty. Others seemed curious about how I would respond to such a direct attack. All were waiting to see whether I would crumble under the public humiliation. Instead, I smiled calmly and walked toward our house. "Victoria, where are you going?" David called after me. "To get something from the office," I replied. "I'll be right back." I climbed the stairs to our home office where I kept important documents in a fireproof safe behind David's desk. Legal contracts, insurance policies, investment records, and the prenuptial agreement that Helen didn't know existed. The document was exactly where I'd filed it 5 years ago, in a folder marked Marriage Documents, Private. 27 pages of legal language that David's family attorney had helped draft, though he'd been sworn to confidentiality about its contents. I returned to the garden where guests were standing in uncomfortable silence while Helen basked in the satisfaction of having finally said what she'd been thinking for 5 years. "Helen," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the garden, "since you're concerned about David's future and family compatibility, I thought you might be interested in seeing this." I held up the prenuptial agreement for everyone to see. The legal document was bound in official blue covers with ribbons and seals that made its importance unmistakable. "What is that?" Helen asked, though her voice suggested she was beginning to understand that her moment of triumph might be premature. "This is the prenuptial agreement David and I signed before our wedding," I announced to the stunned guests. "The document that outlines exactly how our marriage protects the Montgomery family interests you're so concerned about?" Helen's confident expression faltered. "David didn't sign a prenuptial agreement." "Actually, he did. At my insistence, not his." I opened the document to the section I'd memorized years ago. Section 12, subsection A. In the event of divorce initiated by either party, David Montgomery Parker retains sole ownership of all inherited family assets, including trust funds, real estate, and investment portfolios established prior to marriage. The guests were listening intently now, realizing they were witnessing something far more dramatic than a simple family argument. Section 12, subsection B, I continued, establishes that Victoria Reynolds Parker waives all claims to Montgomery family wealth, property, or business interests acquired through marriage. Helen was staring at the document like it might be fake. That's impossible. David would never. Section 15. I interrupted, turning to the inheritance provisions, specifically addresses family legacy protection. Would you like me to read that section aloud? David stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. Victoria, what are you doing? I'm addressing your mother's concerns about family compatibility and financial security, I replied. Section 15, Inheritance Clause. Upon the death of David Montgomery Parker, his wife Victoria Reynolds Parker inherits the entirety of his estate, including all Montgomery family trusts, properties, and investment accounts, with full discretionary authority over distribution to surviving family members. The silence that followed was absolute. Helen's face went through several expressions as the implications of what she just heard became clear. "What does that mean?" whispered Margaret Ashford. I smiled at Helen, whose triumphant expression had completely disappeared. "It means that if something happens to David, I inherit everything. The family fortune, the trust funds, the real estate portfolio, all of it. And I have complete authority to decide what, if anything, David's family members receive." Helen grabbed the document from my hands, scanning the legal language frantically. "This can't be legal. It's completely legal. Drafted by Montgomery family attorneys and executed according to Massachusetts state law. David signed it willingly after extensive consultation with his legal counsel." David was reading over his mother's shoulder, his own eyes widening as he remembered the document he'd signed 5 years ago. "Victoria, I never realized the inheritance clause was so comprehensive," I finished. "Your attorney explained that it was the standard protection for marriages involving significant family wealth." Helen was still staring at the document, her face pale with shock. "But this means that if your son dies before me, his family fortune becomes my family fortune," I said clearly. "Every investment, every trust fund, every piece of property that's been in the Montgomery family for generations would legally belong to the woman you just declared isn't good enough for your son." The guests were looking back and forth between Helen and me like spectators at a tennis match. The power dynamic that had defined our relationship for 5 years had just been completely reversed. Furthermore, I continued, pulling out another section of the prenup. Section 23 establishes that any family member who contests the inheritance provisions or attempts to interfere with the marriage forfeits any discretionary bequests I might choose to make. Helen's hands were shaking as she held the document. "David, tell me you understand what this means." David nodded slowly. "It means Victoria protected both of us. If we divorce, she gets nothing from the family money. But if I die first, she inherits everything and decides what happens to it, including," I added conversationally, "whether surviving family members receive anything at all." Helen sank into the nearest chair, the weight of her miscalculation becoming clear. For 5 years, she treated me like an unwelcome intruder who could be intimidated into leaving. She'd never imagined that I might be the person who would ultimately control the family fortune she was so desperate to protect. "Helen," I said gently, "you've spent 5 years telling me I'm not good enough for David, not worthy of the Montgomery name, not capable of understanding your family's standards. You've made it clear that you view me as a temporary inconvenience who will eventually be replaced by someone more suitable." I paused, letting her absorb the full implications of the legal document she was holding. "Unfortunately for you, David and I are very happily married. We have no intention of divorcing, which means that someday, probably many years from now, I will become the sole controller of every asset you've spent your life trying to preserve for Montgomery family members." The garden was completely silent except for the sound of Helen's rapid breathing. "So," I continued, "I suggest you reconsider your approach to our relationship. Because the woman you just declared isn't good enough for your son is the woman who will ultimately decide whether you spend your retirement in comfort or poverty." Charles Ashford cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should give the family some privacy to discuss this." "Actually," I said, "I think we're finished discussing it. Helen now understands the legal realities of our marriage. There's nothing left to explain." David moved to stand beside me, his arm around my waist in a gesture of support. "Mother, I think you owe Victoria an apology." Helen looked up from the prenuptial agreement, her face a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and dawning respect. "Victoria, I had no idea. You had no idea that the woman you've been condescending to for 5 years is actually the person who will inherit your family's entire fortune?" I asked. "Or you had no idea that treating your son's wife with disrespect might have consequences?" "Both," Helen whispered. I walked over to where she sat and gently took the prenuptial agreement from her hands. "Helen, I've never wanted your family's money. I make an excellent living in my own career. But David insisted on the inheritance clause because he wanted to ensure that his wife would be financially secure regardless of what happened to him." She nodded, still processing the reversal of everything she believed about our marriage. "What I do want," I continued, "is basic respect. Not because I'll inherit your family fortune, but because I'm a successful professional who loves your son and has been a faithful member of this family for 5 years." "You're right," Helen said quietly. "I've been unfair to you." "You've been cruel," I corrected. "You've spent 5 years trying to make me feel unwelcome in my own marriage. You've criticized my background, questioned my worthiness, and suggested that David should have married someone else." Helen's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was protecting him. From what? From a Harvard Law graduate who helps major corporations navigate complex legal challenges? From someone who insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect his family's interests? From a wife who supports his career and makes him genuinely happy? David squeezed my hand. "Victoria, she understands now." "Does she?" I asked, looking directly at Helen. "Because I need to know that this behavior stops immediately. No more subtle insults, no more suggestions that I'm not worthy of the Montgomery name, no more treating me like a temporary inconvenience." Helen wiped her eyes and stood up slowly. "Victoria, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect, and I owe David an apology for trying to undermine his marriage." She turned to address the guests who were still standing in awkward silence. "I was wrong about Victoria. Completely wrong. She's been a wonderful wife to David and a more generous family member than I deserved. Margaret Ashford approached with a small smile. "Victoria, I have to admit, that was the most impressive legal maneuvering I've ever witnessed at a social gathering." Charles nodded approvingly. "Beautifully handled. You turned what could have been a devastating public humiliation into a demonstration of strength and preparation." Other guests began approaching to offer their congratulations on our anniversary and their admiration for how I'd handled Helen's attack. The evening that had started as Helen's public declaration of my unworthiness had become a celebration of my tactical brilliance. David pulled me aside while guests resumed their conversations. "Victoria, I had no idea Mother had been so terrible to you. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was handling it," I replied, "and because you love your mother despite her flaws. I didn't want to force you to choose between us." "You'll never have to worry about that again," he said firmly. "What she said tonight was unforgivable." "It was illuminating," I corrected. "Now she understands exactly what she has to lose if she continues treating me poorly." As the evening wound down and guests departed, Helen approached me one final time. "Victoria, may I speak with you privately?" We walked to a quiet corner of the garden where the catering staff was beginning to clean up the remnants of what would undoubtedly become legendary gossip in the Montgomery family's social circle. "I need you to understand something," Helen said. "I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was trying to protect David from what I thought was a mistake." "Based on what evidence?" "My educational background, my professional success, my treatment of your son." "Based on fear," she admitted. "Fear that David was throwing away advantages I'd spent my life preserving for him." I studied her carefully. For the first time since I'd known her, Helen looked genuinely vulnerable rather than calculating. "Helen, the advantages you're trying to preserve aren't worth anything if they require David to marry someone he doesn't love." "I understand that now." "Do you? Because this isn't just about inheritance documents or legal technicalities. This is about whether you can accept that David chose me for reasons that have nothing to do with social status or family connections." Helen was quiet for a long moment. "He chose well," she said finally. "Better than I gave him credit for." "He chose for love," I replied. "The same way he chooses to maintain a relationship with a mother who spent 5 years trying to sabotage his marriage." She flinched at the accuracy of my assessment. "What can I do to make this right?" "Start by treating me like David's wife, instead of like someone who's temporarily borrowing your son." "And the prenuptial agreement?" I smiled. "The prenuptial agreement protects everyone's interests, including yours. As long as you treat me with respect, you have nothing to worry about." 6 months later, Helen and I had developed what could almost be called a friendship. She still hosted elaborate social events and maintained her position in the city's high society circles, but she no longer treated me like an unwelcome outsider. Instead, she began introducing me as her brilliant daughter-in-law who'd graduated from Harvard Law and specialized in corporate mergers. She talked about my professional accomplishments with the same pride she'd previously reserved for David's career achievements. The change wasn't just social politeness. Helen had genuinely begun to appreciate that her son's happiness mattered more than social conventions. She'd also realized that having a successful attorney as a daughter-in-law provided certain advantages in her social circle. David and I celebrated our 6th anniversary with a small dinner party that Helen organized according to my preferences rather than her own. The guest list included people David and I actually enjoyed spending time with, rather than just impressive names from the social register. During the toasts, Helen stood up to address the guests. 5 years ago, I thought David was making a mistake by marrying outside our immediate social circle. I was wrong about everything except David's judgment. Victoria has been the best thing that ever happened to our family." She raised her glass toward me. "To the woman who was smart enough to protect everyone's interests, strong enough to stand up to family interference, and patient enough to give a stubborn mother-in-law time to recognize her value." As guests applauded, I reflected on a long journey from Helen's hostility to her genuine acceptance. The prenuptial agreement that she discovered at our anniversary party had been my insurance policy, but respect had been earned through years of professional success and personal integrity. Sometimes the most satisfying victory isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's forcing them to acknowledge that they were wrong about who you are and what you're worth. Helen had spent 5 years trying to make me feel inferior. In the end, she learned that the woman she dismissed was actually the person who held her family's future in her hands. The legal documents were just paperwork. The real power had always been in refusing to accept Helen's assessment of my worth, maintaining my professional excellence, and proving through actions rather than arguments that David had chosen wisely. 7 years later, when Helen's friends ask about her daughter-in-law, she tells them I'm the most accomplished attorney in the city and the perfect wife for her son. She's learned that family strength comes from supporting each other's success rather than competing for social status. And the prenuptial agreement? It remains filed safely in our home office, protecting everyone's interests while serving as a reminder that the most effective defense against prejudice is preparation, patience, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. The moment I pulled into my driveway and saw Patricia standing in my garage with a stack of bills in her hand, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. My mother-in-law had that particular smile she wore when she believed she'd done something exceptionally clever, the kind that made my stomach tighten with dread. "Victoria," she called out cheerfully, waving the money like a trophy. "Perfect timing. I have wonderful news." I stepped out of my Honda Civic slowly, scanning the garage. The space where my project car usually sat was conspicuously empty. Just an oil stain on the concrete and the faint smell of motor oil lingering in the air. "Where's the Cobra?" I asked quietly, though I already suspected the answer. Patricia's smile widened. "I sold that junky old car for you. Got $3,000 cash, which is probably more than that rust bucket was worth. You needed something more practical anyway, honey. A woman your age driving around in some beat-up sports car from the 60s. It was embarrassing." For a moment, the world seemed to tilt sideways. I stared at the empty space where I'd spent the last 4 years of my life meticulously restoring a 1967 Shelby Cobra 427. Not just any Cobra, but one of only 348 ever made. A car I'd purchased as a rusted shell and rebuilt from the ground up with my own hands. "You sold it," I repeated, my voice steady despite the hurricane building in my chest. "For your own good," Patricia said, smoothing her perfectly styled gray hair. "Mark agrees with me. You've been wasting too much time in this garage playing with car parts instead of focusing on more appropriate hobbies. Maybe now you'll take up something more suitable, like gardening or cooking." I walked closer, noting the way she held the cash possessively against her chest. $3,000 for a car that had just been appraised at $400,000. "Who did you sell it to?" I asked. "Some young man who answered my Craigslist ad. Such a sweet boy. Said he'd been looking for a project car just like this one. I told him it needed a lot of work, but he seemed excited about it." She beamed with satisfaction. "I even threw in all those expensive tools cluttering up the garage." My tools. My grandfather's tools. The Snap-on collection worth more than most people's cars. accumulated over 30 years of professional racing and restoration work. Tools I'd inherited when he passed, along with his knowledge and his passion for automotive engineering. "Patricia," I said carefully, "did you happen to keep any documentation from the sale?" "Of course I did. I'm not careless." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse. "Here's the bill of sale. Everything's perfectly legal." I took the paper with steady hands, though inside I was calculating just how monumentally she'd destroyed something irreplaceable. The bill of sale was handwritten on notebook paper, signed with barely legible names. No title transfer, no proper identification recorded. "This young man," I said, "did he show you his driver's license? Get his address?" Patricia waved dismissively. "He paid cash. That's all that matters." "Really, Victoria, you should be thanking me. Now you can buy something sensible with that money. Maybe a nice set-in." I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my pocket. "You know what, Patricia? You're absolutely right. Thank you for taking care of this for me." The confusion that flickered across her face was almost worth the devastation. She'd expected an argument, tears, anger. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she wanted: gratitude and submission. "Well," she said, somewhat deflated by my response, "you're welcome. I just want what's best for you, dear. Mark will be so pleased when he gets home from his business trip." Mark, my husband of 6 years, who'd given his mother a key to our house for emergencies and never quite managed to set appropriate boundaries. Mark, who thought my hobby was cute, but didn't really understand why I spent my weekends covered in grease instead of shopping or getting my nails done. "I'm sure he will be," I said, pulling out my phone. "Patricia, would you mind waiting here for just a moment? I need to make a quick call." She nodded, still counting the bills with obvious satisfaction. "Take your time, dear. I'll just tidy up this garage a bit while you're handling whatever business you need to." I walked to the far corner of the garage, where the Wi-Fi signal was strongest, and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Detective Martinez, this is Victoria Chen. I need to report a theft." "Victoria? What happened?" Detective Carmen Martinez had been a friend since college, back when we were both struggling through our respective programs. She in criminal justice, me in mechanical engineering. She knew about my work, my reputation in the vintage racing community, and the value of what I'd been building. "Someone sold my Cobra without my permission," I said quietly, glancing back at Patricia, who was now rearranging my remaining tools with the confidence of someone who'd never held a wrench in her life. "The 67? The one you've been restoring for Barrett Jackson?" "That's the one." Carmen's whistle was low and sympathetic. "Jesus, Victoria. Who did it?" "My mother-in-law. She had access to the garage and thought she was doing me a favor by getting rid of my junk car for $3,000. There was a long pause. $3,000? For a numbers matching 427 Cobra. Apparently, she listed it on Craigslist as a project car that needed work. That's got to be the most expensive mistake in automotive history. What do you need from me?" "I've got the buyer's information from the bill of sale, but it's pretty sparse. Can you run what I have and see if we can track down where my car went?" "Absolutely. Text me everything you've got. And Victoria, I'm sorry. I know what that car meant to you." I glanced at Patricia, who was now trying to organize my socket sets by color rather than size. "Thanks, Carmen. I'll send you the details now." After ending the call, I typed out the buyer's information, what little there was, and sent it to Carmen. Then I walked back to where Patricia stood, her hands on her hips, surveying the garage like a general reviewing conquered territory. "All taken care of," I said pleasantly. "Now, why don't you head home? Mark should be back from Chicago tomorrow evening, and I'm sure you'll want to tell him all about your successful sale." Of course. She gathered her purse and the cash, practically glowing with self-satisfaction. "And remember, this is really for the best. You'll see." After she left, I stood alone in the garage, staring at the empty space where my Cobra had lived. 4 years of work. 4 years of research, of hunting down original parts, of learning welding techniques from YouTube videos, of rebuilding that 427 big block engine by hand. 4 years of connecting with my grandfather's memory through every bolt I turned and every panel I straightened. Patricia saw junk. I saw art. The next morning, Carmen called with news. "The name on the bill of sale is fake," she said without preamble. "David Johnson, but the phone number doesn't exist, and there's no David Johnson at the address listed. Professional buyer? That's what I'm thinking. Someone who knows to scout Craigslist for undervalued classics, uses fake information, and probably flips them quickly through auction houses or private dealers." I leaned back in my office chair, staring out the window of the engineering firm where I worked as a senior consultant. So my car is probably already gone. Maybe not. I've got some contacts in the classic car world. Let me make some calls, see if anyone's heard about a Cobra suddenly appearing on the market. "Thanks, Carmen. I owe you. Just promise me that when this is over, you'll let me take a ride in whatever car you build next." That afternoon, as I sat in a client meeting reviewing stress analyses for a new bridge design, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Mom told me about the car. Probably for the best. Maybe now we can use the garage for storage like normal people." I stared at the message for a long moment, then turned my phone face down and returned my attention to the meeting. Some conversations were better had in person. Mark arrived home the next evening in his usual flurry of activity. Suitcase dropped in the entryway, tie loosened, already talking about his successful presentations in Chicago before he'd even properly said hello. "Victoria, you should have seen the client's face when I showed them our cost projections," he said, loosening his tie. "They practically signed the contract on the spot." "That's wonderful," I said from the kitchen, where I was preparing dinner. "How was your flight?" "Delayed, of course, but first class makes everything bearable." He wandered into the kitchen and kissed my cheek absently. "Mom told me about the car situation. I have to say, I'm relieved. That thing was becoming an obsession." I continued stirring the pasta sauce, my movements calm and measured. "Is that how you saw it?" "Come on, Vic. You spent every weekend in that garage. It was like being married to a mechanic." He laughed, clearly not noticing the tension in my shoulders. "Now we can actually use the space for something practical. Maybe set up a home gym or create some proper storage. Your mother sold my car without my permission," I said quietly. "She was trying to help. You know how she is, always thinking about what's best for family." He opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. "Besides, $3,000 isn't bad for something that old. We can put it toward a nice vacation." I turned to face him, studying the man I'd married. Mark was handsome in a conventional way, tall, well-dressed, successful in his sales career. But standing in our kitchen, casually dismissing 4 years of my work as a minor inconvenience, he looked like a stranger. "That car was worth $400,000, I said. Mark nearly choked on his beer. "What?" "It was a 1967 Shelby Cobra 427. one of 348 ever made. I'd been restoring it to museum quality for the Barrett-Jackson auction in Scottsdale. The color drained from his face. You never told me it was worth that much. You never asked. In 6 years of marriage, you never once asked me about the technical aspects of what I was doing. Never inquired about the value. Never showed any interest beyond complaining that I spent too much time working on it. But $3,000. Mom said it was just an old project car. Your mother committed theft. She sold property that didn't belong to her for a fraction of its value to a buyer who gave false information. Mark set down his beer with shaking hands. Can we get it back? I don't know. The police are investigating, but the buyer used a fake name and address. Professional car thieves often use Craigslist to find exactly these kinds of opportunities. Expensive classics being sold by people who don't know their value. Oh God, what are we going to do? For the first time since I'd come home to find Patricia counting her cash, I smiled. Not the polite, controlled smile I'd been wearing for the past 2 days, but something colder. We are not going to do anything, Mark. I am going to continue working with the police to recover my property. You are going to have a very difficult conversation with your mother about boundaries and legal consequences. The next morning brought a call from Carmen that changed everything. I found your car, she said, excitement clear in her voice. I was in my office, but I immediately closed the door and sat down heavily. Where? Scottsdale. A private collector named James Morrison bought it from a dealer yesterday. Paid $250,000, which means someone made a very nice profit flipping your Cobra. $250. It was worth $400 fully restored. The dealer probably told him it needed work. But here's the good news. Morrison is a legitimate collector, not a flipper. When I explained the situation, he was horrified. He's willing to cooperate fully. What does that mean? It means we can prove the chain of theft. Morrison has documentation from the dealer. The dealer has records from the original buyer, your fake David Johnson. And we have Patricia's bill of sale. It's a clear case of receiving stolen property. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to breathe. So we can get it back. We can get it back. Morrison's insurance will cover his loss. The dealer is already cooperating to avoid criminal charges, and we're working with Scottsdale PD to trace the money trail. How long? Could be a few weeks for all the paperwork, but your car is being held as evidence. It's not going anywhere. That evening, I called a family meeting. Mark sat across from me at our dining room table, looking haggard and pale. Patricia arrived fashionably late, still carrying herself with the confidence of someone who believed she'd done a good deed. I don't understand why we need a formal meeting, she said, settling into her chair with a slight huff. I already explained everything to Mark. I sold that old car for a very reasonable price. Patricia, I said calmly, I need you to understand something very important. That car you sold was worth $400,000. She blinked. Don't be ridiculous, Victoria. It was just an old. It was a 1967 Shelby Cobra 427. One of the rarest and most valuable muscle cars ever made. I've spent 4 years restoring it to concours condition. Patricia's confident expression flickered. That's impossible. It looked like junk. That's because restoration is a process. What you saw as rust and primer was actually a car that had been completely disassembled, with every component rebuilt or restored to original specifications. I pulled out my tablet and opened the photo album I'd been keeping throughout the restoration. This is what it looked like when I started. The first photo showed the Cobra as I'd found it. a rusted shell with no engine, no interior, sitting on blocks in a barn in Arizona. Patricia looked at it dismissively. See? Junk. I swiped to the next photo. This is after I'd media blasted the body and begun bodywork. The shell gleamed with primer, every line clean and true. Another swipe. The engine rebuild. My grandfather's tools spread across the workbench. The 427 big block torn down to individual components. Each piece cleaned and measured and restored. Patricia's expression grew less certain with each image. The interior restoration. Hand-stitched leather seats. Original gauges rebuilt and recalibrated. A dashboard that looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line in 1967. The final assembly. Everything coming together, chrome gleaming, paint flawless. And this, I said, showing her the final photos, is what you sold for $3,000. The completed Cobra sat in our garage, every surface perfect, every detail authentic. It looked like it had been transported through time from the Shelby factory, untouched by the decades. Patricia's face had gone ashen. I had no idea. The young man who bought it wasn't a sweet boy looking for a project car, I continued. He was a professional car thief who uses Craigslist to find exactly these situations. Valuable cars being sold by people who don't recognize their worth. Car thief? Mark's voice cracked. The name and address he gave were fake. The police are investigating, but he's probably done this before. Take advantage of family disputes, estate sales, or well-meaning relatives who think they're helping. Patricia was staring at the photos, her mouth slightly open. $400,000? That's what it was worth. The police have found it, by the way. A collector in Scottsdale bought it from a dealer for $250,000. He's cooperating with the investigation. So we can get it back? Patricia asked hopefully. I can get it back, I corrected. But there's something else you need to understand. What you did was theft. You sold property that didn't belong to you. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case for criminal charges. The silence that followed was profound. Patricia looked from me to Mark, then back to the photos on my tablet. Criminal charges, she whispered. Theft of property over $100,000 is a first-degree felony in this state. The mandatory minimum sentence is 2 years in prison. Mark buried his face in his hands. Mom, what did you do? I was trying to help, Patricia said, but her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. I thought it was just taking up space. You thought you knew better than I did about my own possessions, I said quietly. You decided that my interests and hobbies were inappropriate and took it upon yourself to fix my life according to your standards. Patricia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll pay you back. With what money? You have $3,000. The car was worth $400,000. We'll figure something out, Mark said desperately. Maybe we can take out loans, or... Mark, I said, my voice firm enough to cut through his panic. I want you to be very clear about something. Your mother committed a felony. She stole property worth more than most people's houses. This isn't something you can fix with good intentions and a payment plan. Over the next 2 weeks, as the police investigation proceeded and the legal machinery ground into motion, I watched my family dynamic shift in ways I hadn't anticipated. Mark, faced with the reality of his mother's actions and their consequences, began to see our relationship differently. He'd spent years minimizing my interests and supporting his mother's interference, because it was easier than confronting the family dynamics he'd grown up with. Now, forced to acknowledge that my hobby was actually a sophisticated technical skill worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, he was struggling to reconcile the woman he thought he'd married with the expert craftsperson I'd always been. "I never realized," he said one evening as we sat in the kitchen. "I mean, I knew you were good with cars, but I didn't understand." "You didn't want to understand," I replied. It was easier to dismiss it as a quirky hobby than to recognize that I might have expertise in something you knew nothing about. The legal resolution came faster than I'd expected. Morrison, the collector in Scottsdale, was indeed everything Carmen had said, horrified by the situation and eager to cooperate. The dealer who'd sold him the car agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. The money trail led back to the original thief, who turned out to be part of a larger operation targeting classic cars. Patricia, faced with the possibility of prison time and the reality of what she'd destroyed, accepted a plea agreement. 5 years probation, restitution payments, and community service. But the damage to our family relationships was permanent. Mark and I entered counseling, but it became clear that this incident had revealed fundamental incompatibilities we'd both been avoiding. He needed a wife who fit his image of conventional success, someone whose achievements complemented his rather than challenging his understanding of the world. I needed a partner who could respect my expertise and interests, even when they fell outside his experience. 6 months after Patricia sold my car, Mark and I signed divorce papers. It was amicable, all things considered. He kept the house with its empty garage. I took my tools, the ones that hadn't been sold, and moved to a small place outside the city with a 2-car garage and room to work. The Cobra was returned to me in perfect condition, apparently none the worse for its adventure in theft and recovery. Morrison had stored it properly and even had his own mechanic perform a full inspection to ensure no damage had occurred during transport. But I'd lost the desire to finish that particular project. Too much had happened. Too many associations had been tainted. Instead, I sold it myself, properly this time, through Barrett Jackson, with full documentation and provenance. It brought $420,000 at auction. With that money, I bought something I'd always dreamed of but never thought I could afford, a 1970 Plymouth Cuda that had been languishing in a barn for 30 years. Not as rare as the Cobra, but more personally meaningful. My grandfather had owned one just like it, had taught me to drive in one just like it. This time, though, I was building it for myself. Not for auction, not for investment, just for the pure joy of taking something broken and making it beautiful again. On weekends, I work in my garage with the doors open, music playing, tools spread across the workbench exactly the way my grandfather taught me. Neighbors stop by sometimes, curious about the old car taking shape under my hands. Some of them are surprised to find a woman doing the work, but most are just impressed by the craftsmanship. Mark sends occasional texts, usually on holidays or anniversaries. He's dating someone new, he tells me, someone who appreciates the finer things in life. I always text back politely, wishing him well. Patricia and I don't speak at all anymore. That's probably for the best. Last month, Carmen stopped by to see the Cuba's progress. She ran her hands over the freshly painted panels, admiring the deep plum metallic that seemed to glow even in the fluorescent garage lighting. "You know," she said, "I think this one's going to be even better than the Cobra." I smiled, wiping grease from my hands with an old shop rag. Different goals this time. The Cobra was about proving I could do museum-quality work. This one's about remembering why I fell in love with cars in the first place. "And how's that going?" I looked at the Cuda, still months away from completion, but already showing the promise of what it would become. Every curve was perfect, every component chosen with care, every detail a reflection of decades of accumulated knowledge and skill. Better than I expected, I said. Turns out, when you're building something for yourself, instead of for other people's approval, the work is a lot more satisfying. Carmen laughed. Sounds like you learned more than just automotive repair from this whole experience. Maybe I had. Maybe sometimes it takes someone else trying to steal your dreams to help you realize what those dreams actually mean to you. And maybe, sometimes the thing that looks like the worst betrayal becomes the catalyst for the life you were always meant to live.
I'd like to share my experience dealing with a challenging situation involving my mother-in-law, Lily. I must preface this by acknowledging that this topic might be sensitive for some, and I apologize if it offends anyone. Lily has exhibited clear signs of racism, particularly towards individuals with a different skin color than hers. Unfortunately, this has become evident in her treatment of me, her daughter-in-law. To provide some background, I am a 28-year-old woman married to my long-term boyfriend, Zachary, whom I met during our post-graduation at a management college. I am of Indian origin but was born and raised in Boston, while Zach is a white American. Ethnicity became a concern when Zach and I got serious about our relationship. Lily, my mother-in-law, had reservations about our union due to this difference. Despite her initial attempts to appear accepting, her true feelings of disdain were palpable. She would make comments about my ethnicity, emphasizing that it was the color of my skin that bothered her. Initially, during our dating phase, she seemed less aggressive about her disapproval. However, as the years passed and she witnessed our commitment to each other, her discomfort grew. She would openly address me using derogatory terms, even in the presence of Zach. This negativity escalated when Zach began discussing our future together. Lily's animosity extended beyond verbal remarks to mocking me directly, criticizing everything from my choice of clothing to personal habits. Despite being as American as she is, she consistently categorized white Americans as us and we, while referring to people of color as they. Eventually, Zach reached a point where he stopped visiting his family during festivities and special occasions due to Lily's behavior. While I valued family connections, I couldn't be happy with Zach cutting ties, as I cherished my own family deeply. Initially hesitant about marrying into a family where I felt unwelcome, Zach helped me understand the importance of setting boundaries and ensuring that our choices were respected. Even though my parents shared my concerns, Zach's father emerged as a supportive figure, assuring my parents that I would be loved and respected in the family. Despite Lily's disapproval, Zach's father emphasized that the decision to marry someone should be his, urging her to respect his choices and back off. I anticipated that she would cause a disruption at my wedding, but thankfully, everything went smoothly. Prior to the event, I was quite stressed, but my father and mother-in-law assured me they would handle her, and they did. She behaved courteously with my parents and guests, leading me to believe she had moved beyond my skin color and accepted me. To my surprise, however, she seemed stuck on that issue. In an effort to minimize interaction with her, we distanced ourselves. Nevertheless, my father-in-law continued to visit regularly, and I developed a strong bond with him. Lily, on the other hand, proved to be persistent. Despite our decision to stop visiting her, she started showing up at our house unannounced. Eventually, we felt obligated to host her, considering she was Zach's mother, and we couldn't be rude. What bothers me most is that every time she visits, she inquires about our family planning. I tried evading the question, claiming we haven't thought about it yet, but her response is always a vague good. I'm unsure whether she wants us to have children or not, and it's become increasingly difficult to interpret her intentions. I approached Zach about this, but he dismissed it, insisting she's merely curious. The problem is she never brings up the topic in front of him, making it challenging to convey the discomfort I feel from her body language and tone. It's more than just a general inquiry, and I find it unsettling. Recently, during her visit, I caught her searching through my bedside table drawer. It was a bizarre and creepy incident. I was occupied with a client call and informed her it would take about 45 minutes. She seemed fine with it. But when I later discovered the call had ended prematurely, I went to look for her. She had disappeared. Upon returning to the study to retrieve my phone, I heard scrambling noises from my bedroom. Zach wasn't home at the time, and upon entering the room, I found Lily near my bedside table, frantically searching through the drawer. Startled by my presence, she claimed to be looking for a vaporizer due to a cold. I offered her one, but she didn't use it, insisting she would check with my doctor later. Strangely, she didn't exhibit any signs of illness during her stay, making me recall previous instances where I had noticed my closet tampered with and my belongings displaced. Until now, I hadn't paid much attention to those occurrences. Looking back, I can't ignore the fact that during most of Lily's visits, she was at my house. It seems too frequent to be a mere coincidence. The problem is, while it's concerning, I can't bring myself to tell Zach. It's not that he wouldn't understand, but to him, it doesn't seem creepy that his mother was searching for a vaporizer in my drawer. I lack enough evidence to prove my observations, and I'm unclear about what she's even up to. Any advice on how to deal with this? Do you foresee anything? I just want to be alert before I'm caught off guard. Update number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for helping me break down Lily's intentions. If it weren't for you guys, I would have taken forever to figure out what she's up to. I made a list of all the possible things Lily could be behind, and the top assumption that made the most sense was a baby. I connected the dots, considering how she used to ask about having children and then started searching through my bag, closet, and drawer. She must be checking if we use protection, finding them in any of these places, and being reassured that we're not planning children yet. I know it's common for grandparents to expect grandchildren, but in that case, she could have asked us to plan instead of sneaking around. These were my assumptions, and as soon as you suggested it, I started playing around with her to confirm my doubts. I hid my pills and his protection in a different place, not accessible to her. I was careful with my bag and closet when she visited my home. Also, I started playing with my words while talking to her. The next time she asked if we were planning a baby, I blushed and said, "Yeah, we're kind of planning." The expected reaction should have been a positive one, but hers was, "No way, it's too early. You guys should enjoy your life first. The baby can wait." I've never heard a mother-in-law say this. It wasn't even advice, it was more of an instruction. Currently, I'm just enjoying this drama, teasing her that we're planning for a baby and relishing her reaction. I know it's a concern that she doesn't want us to have a baby, and I don't know why. Or maybe I do. I'll probably update you when I have more details about her intentions. This was just a quick update for everyone to have a good laugh. Thanks to those who have been checking on my last post. Update number 2. Hey guys, this is going to be a longer one. I finally figured out Lily's intention behind all these creepy activities. After a month of teasing her that we were planning for a baby, she finally spoke out. One day, she visited us, and Zach was also home. We were 3 sitting together. I said, "Zach, do you know Mom had been insisting me not to have children?" Now, Zach was like, "What?" Lily also turned pale. Zach asked her why she would suggest that, and she ran short of words. I said, "Mom thinks that we should enjoy our life more and children would just destroy our peace and privacy." Mind you, Zach loves children. It was I who was pushing the plan of the baby to the next year. Zach wanted it now. Lily tried to cover up and say, "Yes, I was suggesting it for your own well-being. Enjoy your youth." Zach said he had enjoyed enough, and now he wanted a baby. You know, I could have informed Zach about it earlier, but the joy of having a face-to-face confrontation was too tempting. It led to a heated argument between Zach and Lily, escalating to the point where she turned aggressive. Lily asserted that if we truly wanted to have a baby, we should opt for traditional surrogacy. She justified this suggestion by claiming that pregnancy is difficult for women, citing her business and career as factors that would be adversely affected. According to her, not only would my work be impacted, but Zach's business would also suffer because he would have to take care of me. She insisted that we could afford surrogacy and encouraged us to go for it. I was perplexed. I knew she couldn't be genuinely kind and considerate. Her suggestion of surrogacy wasn't about our work and well-being. Zach, in response, remained calm, agreeing to consider the idea. Lily, thinking that we were immediately planning for a baby, showed up a few days later. This time, she deliberately checked Zach's availability, claiming she had something important to discuss. To my surprise, she brought a list of top places providing surrogacy facilities and had shortlisted women offering surrogacy. As if that wasn't enough, she also had a list of female egg donors, shortlisting two with the best genetic features. Zach and I were taken aback. I used a punching bag to calm my nerves, while Zach lost his temper, yelling at her for being nosy in our lives. He firmly stated that it wasn't her business to interfere in our lives. Lily insisted that her motive was well-intentioned, but I continued to probe. I questioned the need for an egg donor when I was fertile enough. Finally, she blurted out, "Your egg is going to have a brown baby. I cannot let you guys color our genes." The outrageousness of her statement left us in shock. Zach would have resorted to physical confrontation if she wasn't his mother. Lily stormed out, giving me a look that suggested I had ruined her relationship with Zach. I didn't care. I had to bring this to Zach's notice. A few days later, she sent a sorry card to Zach, but he refused to speak to her. Despite her attempts to mend the relationship, he remained firm. She even visited his office with flowers, but Zach did not forgive her. She's now trying to fix her relationship with Zach by being extra sweet to me, but she hasn't apologized to me. In reality, she had belittled and offended me. Fortunately, Zach defended me so firmly that I didn't need to intervene. I hope she learns her lesson and refrains from interfering in our personal life. I'll keep you updated if anything develops. Update number 3, guys. Lily doesn't seem to have learned her lesson. I apologize for not updating this often due to my hectic schedule, but I appreciate the supportive space here. I feel safe sharing these events with you. Following the confrontation, Zach ceased communication with his mom. Despite her attempts to reach out, he remained silent. Lily resorted to sobbing to my father-in-law, expressing remorse for her words and expressing a desire to mend everything. My father-in-law, a principled family man, holds significant respect from all of us. He reached out to Zach, urging him to forgive Lily. Zach, influenced by his father's values, forgave his mother but established a firm boundary against her interference in our lives. Lily pledged not to meddle, expressing guilt and a desire to spend time with us to cope. Although Zach and I spent minimal time at home due to work, parties, or vacations, we allowed Lily to stay. Amid discussions about children, Zach and I decided to start planning for a baby immediately. Despite our efforts, my cycles came and went with no positive results after 3 or 4 cycles of trying. Concerned, we consulted a doctor, repeating tests for genetic issues and psychological barriers, but nothing surfaced. The doctor advised us to keep trying for at least a year. A visit to a fertility counselor revealed the challenges some women face after years of trying, providing a glimmer of hope. While Lily lived with us, she did not intrude, and I kept the fertility struggles from her, attributing my stress to work. As therapy proved ineffective, I stumbled upon something suspicious: Lily tampering with my morning juice. I witnessed it and confirmed my suspicion with my maid's involvement. I promptly disposed of the juice and realized that the lack of side effects indicated a connection to my birth control pills. I refrained from eating or drinking anything separately and considered revealing this to Zach. Lacking evidence, I consulted a doctor friend who suggested avoiding revenge at that point and instead recommended distancing myself from Lily. She requested me to assure Lily that I was opting for traditional surrogacy due to my alleged inability to produce healthy eggs. I insisted on a written report, but she claimed she couldn't risk her career. Despite this, She created a fake report under her name and location, stating that I was not fertile enough to produce eggs. Returning home, I showed it to Lily, feigning tears and distress. I conveyed that the doctor suggested surrogacy, and she appeared delighted. I asked her not to inform Zach because he wouldn't agree to using someone else's genes for our baby. Making her my ally, we both started looking for doctors and surrogate mothers. Lily, however, urged me to continue the search as she had to return to her husband. She insisted on finding gorgeous white women as donors. Once she left, I confronted the maid about the birth control pill incident. Tearfully, she confessed to Lily's instructions, but I recorded her admission. I didn't fire her because she was bribed by Lily, threatening to report her to the police if she revealed this to Lily. Now that Lily's not around, I'm hoping to conceive naturally. I'll update you when I have time. Thanks for checking in. Update number 4, starting with good news. We're expecting twins in February. I know it's a late update. Blame my pregnancy exhaustion. Conceiving on the first cycle after Lily left, Zach and I were overjoyed upon seeing the positive results. Our happiness doubled upon seeing our twins on the ultrasound. Insisting on keeping the pregnancy a secret until the first trimester was over, I explained to Zach about Lily's actions. I played the recorded confession for him, and he was furious but chose not to fire the maid. We minimized conversations with Lily, occasionally updating her on our surrogacy progress, claiming we had put a halt on it. About a month ago, it was Lily and father-in-law's 30th anniversary, and they organized a huge celebration. I proposed using the occasion to announce our pregnancy, as I was about to complete the 3rd month. After the cake cutting, during the toasts, Zach and I announced our family of 2 was soon becoming a family of 4, presenting 3D images of our twins. People showered us with love and blessings. Lily assumed we were pregnant through surrogacy, so her reaction was subdued. Later, she asked why I hadn't informed her about the surrogacy. I suggested discussing it after the party, and once the celebration ended, we gathered as close family members. Lily questioned why I wasn't drinking and demanded to see a picture of the egg donor to examine her facial features. In response, I tightened my dress to reveal my tiny baby bump. Lily, taken aback, lost her composure, yelling and hurling insults at me. Zach intervened, urging her to stop, but she proceeded to disclose all our conversations about infertility and surrogacy. Standing there quietly, I felt the weight of her revelations. Zach played the confession recording for everyone, leaving my father-in-law furious to learn about Lily's malicious actions to prevent my pregnancy. In her defense, Lily expressed her reluctance to see a brown child in her family, causing an uproar among Zach's extended family. Shouting and yelling ensued, primarily between Lily and the others present, including Zach's uncle, brother-in-law, and his wife. Lily continued making outrageous statements, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. My father-in-law sternly warned Lily that if she spoke one more word against me, he would divorce her. Zach asserted that she had done enough harm and banned her from our home and future children. Lily left the house, portraying herself as the victim, claiming nobody understood her. My father-in-law and others consoled and apologized to me for Lily's behavior. Despite his apologies, my father-in-law expressed regret for failing to keep Lily in check. Zach and I decided to take a short trip to help me cope with Lily's wrath and the impact on my mental state due to pregnancy hormones. During the trip, I cried uncontrollably, but it eventually aided in my emotional recovery. Despite Lily's attempts to contact Zach and apologize, he remained adamant about not allowing her in during the pregnancy phase. We couldn't trust her, fearing she might disturb me mentally. I wanted to focus on being happy and enjoying my pregnancy. Thank you all for the love and blessings. Please wish me a healthy pregnancy. I'm not surprised that the mother-in-law was cut off towards the end of the story, and the father-in-law gave a strict warning. If she continued with her behavior, he would divorce her. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Feel free to share your comments below. Thank you for your support, and I hope you have a fantastic day. People like you, with no job and a limited education, are not welcome in this household." With those words, my mother-in-law poured scalding water on me. "It's hot, please stop." I involuntarily screamed, shocked by her bizarre behavior. Pouring boiling water on anyone is inexcusable. Fortunately, I suffered no burns, but it could have been a disaster. I couldn't believe my mother-in-law would resort to such extremes. Moreover, it wasn't me but my husband who was unemployed. A growing anger towards my mother-in-law's attitude surged within me. Enough is enough. If she's gone this far, I'll do as she wishes. Understood. If you insist, I have no choice. I'll leave this house, I declared. Finally, you're leaving. That makes things easier for me. My mother-in-law expressed joy, far from being remorseful. I no longer wanted to stay in such a hostile environment. I promptly packed my things and returned to my parents' home. My mother-in-law didn't know that my husband, Raffle, was unemployed or that I had been supporting the household finances. In fact, since quitting my job, I had started trading stocks and was earning about $30,000 a month. Even if I was driven out of her house, I could still live on my own without any issues. I wouldn't have any qualms being on my own. Even if she came to me in tears, struggling with living expenses, I would never lend a hand. She should regret kicking me out like this. I had married Raphael about 2 years ago. We were from the same university and had been dating since then. Both of us, graduates of the economics department, aspired to work in finance and managed to secure jobs at different brokerage companies after graduation. Despite our busy days, we maintained our relationship. 3 years later, Raphael proposed. "Julia, I will definitely make you happy. Marry me." Believing that I could be happy with Raphael, I accepted. "Yes, I'm looking forward to it." We decided to get married, thinking we could build a happy family together. However, Raphael then dropped an unexpected bomb. "Hey, Julia, would you quit your job and live with me at my parents' house?" "What? I don't mind quitting my job, but we're newlyweds. I'd like to live with just the two of us. I'm just worried about leaving my mother alone. I'll make sure it won't be a burden to you." Raphael's father had passed away when he was in middle school, and since then he had lived with his mother. Being an only child, Raphael was concerned about her. Understanding his feelings, I agreed. "Okay, I'll live with you." 2 weeks later, we moved into Raphael's family home. My mother-in-law, now able to live with Raphael, initially greeted us with a pleased expression. However, as soon as she looked at me, her expression clouded. She stared at me coldly, making it painfully clear that I was not welcomed. "It doesn't matter. You didn't have to come here." What did I mishear? I thought I heard my mother-in-law muttering something under her breath, but I couldn't make it out clearly. I smiled and brushed it off. At this point, I began to feel a bit anxious about living with her. However, the day passed without any particular issues. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my mother-in-law yelling at me. "Are you still sleeping? Hurry up and prepare breakfast." When I looked at the clock by my bed, it was still before dawn, around 4:00 a.m., and it was still dark outside. I was surprised that she would demand breakfast so early. Why so early? "Don't just laze around because you're not working." My mother-in-law scolded me, still groggy from sleep. I thought it was way too early in the morning, but I couldn't argue back and started preparing breakfast. Even while preparing breakfast, my mother-in-law kept berating me. "Hurry up! Why does it take you so long? You're so slow." After 30 minutes, breakfast was finally ready. "I'm sorry for making you wait. You finally finished. Can't you make it faster?" My mother-in-law complained again. I wanted to retort that it was physically impossible to do it any faster, but I just smiled and shrugged it off. "What is this? This soup is too salty. What is it?" "I don't think it's that salty. What are you saying? There's something wrong with my taste? Are you trying to kill me quickly by feeding me such salty meals? I never thought or intended such a thing. What is she talking about, and why is she so harsh on me?" Curious, I mustered the courage to ask my mother-in-law, "Why are you so harsh on me? What are you talking about? I don't think I'm being harsh. Or are you trying to make me the bad guy?" No, that's not what I mean. I was overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's pressure and couldn't talk back. Finish eating. Start cleaning. After that, there's laundry to do, so there's no time to rest. Since then, every day, I was continually harassed by my mother-in-law, wearing me down both mentally and physically. While I was cleaning, she would say things like, "You missed the dust in the corner." When I was doing laundry, she'd complain, "There's still a stain." A month after starting to live with her, I felt like I was going to break. So I talked to Raphael about it. "It's about your mother. She's been saying mean things to me every day, and it's hard. Could you please tell her not to say such things?" But Raphael showed no reaction. I was momentarily irritated by Raphael's lack of response. But then I noticed something strange about him. He was pale, as if he had something important to say. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" When I asked, Raphael hesitantly began to speak. "Actually, I've been fired from the company." "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I was speechless, unable to comprehend. There was a downsizing at the company, and I got laid off, according to Raphael. Due to recent economic downturns, the company's profits had plummeted, leading to unavoidable large-scale layoffs. "So you'll be unemployed from tomorrow." "Well, I can work for one more month after receiving the notice of dismissal. But after that..." Fortunately, I had been using my knowledge from my time at the securities company to trade stocks. Although I struggled at first, I was now earning about $30,000 a month, so we weren't struggling financially. I was comforting Raphael and had forgotten about all the harassment from my mother-in-law. From the next day onwards, I endured my mother-in-law's harsh treatments as Raphael lost his job. Feeling the need to be strong and support him, I continued to endure the situation. A month passed, and Raphael was officially laid off and became unemployed. He started looking for a job initially, but gradually he began to spend most of his time at home, making excuses. "Shouldn't you start looking for a job more seriously?" I suggested. "Yeah, I'm looking, but it's hard to find a good company that will suit me," Raphael replied, seemingly having no intention of actively seeking new employment. Reluctantly, I continued to support our household. As time passed, the harassment from my mother-in-law intensified, and I grew increasingly exhausted. Initially, I thought I had to endure it because Raphael was unemployed, but I no longer felt that way. I spent my days feeling listless. One day, Raphael unusually went out in the morning. Perhaps he had finally started to seriously look for a job. After seeing him off, I started cleaning as usual. "Make sure it's clean. Do it properly." My mother-in-law sipped coffee on the living room sofa, hurling sarcasm at me. Fed up, I ignored her. Suddenly, she threw a tantrum and yelled at me. "How dare you ignore me? You're just a mere daughter-in-law. You don't even have a job." Ignoring her, I continued cleaning. She grew angrier and confronted me. "Still ignoring me? Unemployed and uneducated people like you should leave this house." She yelled and then poured boiling water on me, the hot water she had prepared for her coffee. "It's hot. Please stop." I screamed involuntarily at her sudden action. Thankfully, the water wasn't super boiling hot, so I didn't suffer any burns, but it could have been a disaster. Finally reacting, she said, "This is what I've been saying. If you're not working, leave this house." She smirked as she spoke. Fed up with her behavior, I had no choice but to agree to her demand. "All right, I'll leave." "Good. That makes things easier. Leave quickly." I quickly packed my things and decided to leave that day. I no longer wanted to spend another second in that house. I left, heading straight to my parents' home. Upon arrival, my parents were surprised by the sudden visit, but welcomed me warmly. I waited for a call from Raphael, but there was neither a phone call nor a message. Feeling a bit lonely, I decided not to contact him until he reached out. A month passed since I returned to my parents' house, but there was still no contact from Raphael. My feelings for him faded, and I started considering divorce. One early morning, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. On the monitor, I saw, to my surprise, Raphael, and my mother-in-law. What now, after all this time? I thought. Yes, what can I do for you? I've forgiven you. Now come back home quickly, she yelled through the intercom as usual. Forgiving me? What's she talking about? I appreciated her words, but I hadn't done anything that required forgiveness from her. After telling her that, I ended the intercom call, boiling with anger at my mother-in-law's attitude. However, they were persistent, banging on the front door violently. Don't just hang up on me. Come on, let's go back, my mother-in-law yelled. Considering the noise they were making could become a hassle to the neighborhood, I reluctantly opened the door, inviting my mother-in-law and Raphael inside after seating them on the sofa in the living room. I inquired about their unexpected visit, wondering why they were both there all of a sudden. It was my mother-in-law who had insisted that I leave, and now she was telling me to come back. The situation was perplexing, and I couldn't make any sense of it. You're the one who told me to leave. There's no way I can go back now, I asserted. My mother-in-law responded with frustration, accusing me of childish behavior and claiming to have forgiven me. She insisted that I return and stay in her house, even stating that she'd let me, an unemployed and uneducated person, stay there. But I'm not the unemployed one, it's Raphael. And if I go back, they'll take advantage of me every day. I might not be working, but what about your son, huh? I retorted. Raphael seemed surprised at this revelation. My mother-in-law appeared confused, indicating that Raphael hadn't informed her about his layoff. Pressed further, Raphael finally admitted to being laid off from the company. Apologies and explanations ensued, with Raphael justifying his actions by relying on my income for financial stability. My mother-in-law, shocked at the news, openly expressed anger toward Raphael for not finding a job yet. Why did you keep quiet about this? What are we going to do now? She scolded him. Raphael assured her that my income would suffice for the time being, causing my mother-in-law to label him as worthless for not actively seeking employment. Fed up with Raphael's excuses, I couldn't believe that I had ever thought of supporting him. When my mother-in-law suggested I come back, I vehemently rejected the idea, considering all the mistreatment I had endured. Their unexpected visit had turned into a heated argument, revealing the truth about my mother-in-law pouring boiling water on me. Raphael was shocked to learn about this incident and confronted his mother. Why did you do that? He asked her. She admitted to the act, attributing it to my ignoring her. The revelation sparked a heated exchange between Raphael and his mother, prompting me to intervene and urge them to take their arguments home. Realizing the impact of their loud arguments on someone else's house, my words prompted a change in their attitudes. Previously assertive and bold, they now pleaded with me to come back, promising that they wouldn't cause any harm again. Despite their pleas, I saw through their intentions. Raphael's promise to find a job seemed insincere, and my mother-in-law's assurance not to cause trouble appeared dubious. I voiced my skepticism, stating that their words were pointless and that they would only take advantage of me. Their silence confirmed my suspicions, and I left them in the living room, heading to my room, leaving them to contemplate their actions. When I returned to the living room 5 minutes later, they were still sitting in silence with their heads down. Frustrated by the prolonged silence, I questioned, "How long do you plan to stay quiet? It doesn't matter to me anymore." Instead of a response, Raphael signed something. I had handed him a pre-filled divorce form with my name on it. Surprised by the document, Raphael looked utterly confused. I bluntly explained, "Can't you see it's a divorce form? I'm done with someone who won't find a job and didn't even contact me after I went back to my parents' house." "Do wait, please. This is too sudden," Raphael protested. I found his stubbornness irritating, as he seemed oblivious to the fact that his actions were the root cause of our problems. Unmoved, I affirmed, "I've made up my mind. My decision to divorce you won't change, no matter what you say." Raphael, still in disbelief, questioned if divorce was too harsh. Coldly, I responded, "I don't think so. It's your fault." I directed the same coldness toward my mother-in-law, who was partly to blame. Resigned to the situation, Raffle signed the divorce form, warning me not to regret it. However, I felt a sense of relief and I asserted that the one who might regret it was Raffle. I'll submit the divorce form. I don't want any compensation. Just go home, I declared, finalizing my divorce from Raffle. Though it may have seemed harsh, it was necessary to escape the harassment from my mother-in-law and Raffle's unemployment. 2 weeks later, while relaxing at my parents' house, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. She informed me that the electricity and gas had been cut off and questioned if I had done something. I explained that I had stopped paying for Raffle and her living expenses. Hoping for my assistance, she asked if I could cover it just for the month. I found her request absurd, considering we were no longer a couple and didn't live together. I firmly declined, suggesting she ask Raffle for help, as he had promised to find a job. Unable to comprehend my refusal, she pleaded for help, playing the ex-wife card. However, I remained firm, ending the call and blocking her number. Finally, I severed ties with both my ex-mother-in-law, who constantly harassed me, and Raffle, who had proven to be unreliable. Life at my parents' house became peaceful, and I focused on rebuilding my life. Months later, while checking stock charts on a holiday, I received a message from Raffle. He apologized for everything, acknowledging his reliance on me and the recent job at a factory. Despite the apology, I had no intention of getting involved with them again. Raffle mentioned his mother's continued harshness and expressed a desire for me to come back. Reading the message, I believed reconciliation was unlikely. I blocked Raffle's number. 6 months after the divorce, I started dating a man introduced by a friend. He was reliable, treated me well, and despite the age difference, we connected. While marriage was not on the immediate horizon, I cherished the happy times we spent together, focusing on the present and leaving the past behind. Oh, isn't this exquisite? It's not just lovely. It's a pink diamond, and it comes with a price tag of $50,000. My mother-in-law, who couldn't be bothered to attend my own mother's funeral, appears to be relishing a lavish getaway with her friends, completely oblivious to my presence. She gleefully shared details about her new sparkling pink diamond ring, seemingly fueled by jealousy towards a friend who flaunted a similar ring. In her triumph, she revels in having outdone her friend by choosing a more expensive ring from the same store. However, the reality is far from what it seems. It's implausible for her to afford such a costly item, and it turns out she had secretly taken money from my husband's safe to make the purchase. This money, crucial for her future, had been earmarked for her nursing home fees. My name is Hillary Johnson, a 46-year-old woman living with my husband Steve, who is 7 years my senior, and our high school senior daughter Gina. Despite not being wealthy, we lead a stable life. I have worked part-time at a local drugstore for over a decade, and my hobby is cultivating herbs. Lately, I've been challenging myself with a medical herb certification exam. Gina and I often discuss her future dreams, bringing us joy. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, introducing significant changes to our modest lifestyle. According to his will, the house went to Steve, and the cash to my mother-in-law. The money was intended for her nursing home fees, given her age of 75. Despite this, she pleaded tearfully to live in the house, and after much debate, we agreed to cohabitate for a year while searching for a suitable home. The area where the family home is situated has now become a popular high-end residential area. Still, we are not wealthy. It's an old land holding. I learned that my mother-in-law had a habit of spending recklessly, and though I had prepared for it to some extent, the reality was shocking. As Steve heads out for dinner shopping, my mother-in-law, on the first day of our cohabitation, casually asks, "Hillary, could you lend me some money? I'm going out." "Thank you. Just in case something comes up, and I need more, give me $100 for now," she says under the pretext of buying dinner. I found myself pondering how much groceries she intended to purchase. Despite my reservations, I made the mistake of giving her the requested amount. 2 hours later, she returned by taxi, laden with bags from an upscale department store filled with expensive deli items and sweets. Tonight, we feast. I wanted to try these side dishes. They're supposed to be delicious, and we have desserts too, she exclaimed proudly. Curious, I asked, "Mother, how much did this cost?" She replied, "Well, let's see. I went a bit over because of the taxi, but I covered the extra, so it's fine." Her proud declaration left me speechless, but little did I know this was just the beginning. Managing finances became my biggest headache after moving to the family home. While my father-in-law was alive, we used online supermarkets for groceries, paying with his card. Learning from my initial mistake of giving her large sums of money, I no longer entrusted her with shopping and kept the wallet in a locked drawer. Unhappy with not receiving money, she stopped doing any housework, caring only for the flowers at the entrance. Despite our monthly allowance of $300, she squandered it on clothes, beauty salons, meals, or coffee with neighbors. By mid-month, she would usually run out of money and ask for more. Frustrated by her reckless spending, as I was saving for my daughter's education, I calmly admonished her when she requested more money for a lunch date with friends. Even Steve, who works, gets an allowance of $300. I can't give you more than someone who's working, so please use it more wisely. Dissatisfied, she returned to her room, likely to ask Steve for money later. The allowance came from the nursing home fund, and if it diminished, it would be her who suffered. When Steve came home, I expressed my concerns. "Did your mother ask you for more allowance again?" He replied, "Yes, she did. But I can't be too hard on her. She must be lonely without Dad. She's always been vain, you know. But I want to fulfill her wishes for at least this year that she's here. I understand, but your kindness isn't truly benefiting her. Besides, it will eventually have repercussions for us." You're right. I get it. My mother-in-law had a tendency to flaunt, especially in front of her 3 old friends who were mothers of my husband's classmates living in the neighborhood. I became aware of this during the funeral arrangements for my father-in-law. "Steve, it's your father's funeral, so arrange the altar this way and get more extravagant flowers. The neighbors are coming. Don't embarrass your father," she instructed. Steve, being the spouse, complied with her demands to some extent, but the costs were significantly high. My mother-in-law's primary aim was to show off to the neighbors. I even felt sympathy for her, having to keep up with people from a different lifestyle. During the funeral, she only greeted 3 families of her friends. One day, after having lunch with her friends, she came back excited, her eyes sparkling. Today, Debbie showed me a ring worth $20,000 that she got from her husband for their golden wedding anniversary. I've never seen a $20,000 ring before. That's a wonderful gift. You don't have such wealthy friends, do you, Hillary? You'll probably never see anything like that in your life, she remarked with superiority and sarcasm, using her friends to boast. Hillary, you're so plain. Why don't you put on some makeup? Have you ever been to an upscale lunch? It was all about one-upping me. I tried to ignore her words, but she seemed increasingly hostile towards me, especially after I refused to give her more money. After settling my father-in-law's affairs and starting to look for a nursing home, my mother's health took a turn for the worse. When my sister and I rushed to the hospital, the doctor informed us that she had about 3 months to live due to advanced cancer. She was in a fragile state and could deteriorate at any time. My mother had occasionally mentioned feeling unwell before, but being a person of great endurance, it wasn't easy for her to show any signs of weakness. I regretted not paying more attention to her. I asked my sister to stay with her while I went to fetch some clothes and valuables from her apartment. As I packed a large bag in her room, I found some cash, likely her living expenses for the month, in a drawer. I took the cash with me, planning to shower and head back to the hospital. I left the bag in Steve's upstairs room and, after getting ready, noticed the zipper slightly open. A sense of unease washed over me as I checked the bag and found the cash missing. Suppressing my rising anger, I went downstairs to my mother-in-law's room. "Mother, may I ask you something?" I inquired as she prepared to leave. Turning around, she asked, "How's your mother doing? I have plans with my friends right now." I confronted her. "The money that was in the bag in our room. You have it, don't you? That money belongs to my mother. Please return it." "I don't know what you're talking about. I never go upstairs." "Are you accusing me of stealing?" she retorted, rushing past me and heading for the door. "I'm going out for a fancy Chinese dinner with my friends tonight, so I don't need your poor excuse for a meal. Give my regards to your mother." With a smirk on her face, she left the house, leaving me in shock. Just then, Jenna came home and asked, "Mom, are you okay?" "Your grandmother's money. My mother-in-law took it." Unable to confront her without evidence, tears naturally started to fall from my eyes. Jenna gently stroked my back to calm me down. "That's terrible. It must have been her. I've seen her coming down from upstairs before. To think she would stoop to taking your grandmother's money. I can't forgive her. But how's Grandma? If you're going to the hospital, I'll come with you. Let's think of a way to get back at her." As we walked, Jenna's words encouraged me, lightening my heart a bit. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law, I decided to protect my family in my own way. A few days later, my mother's condition suddenly worsened, and she passed away. In her final days, she was mostly in a daze, occasionally lucid. I expressed my gratitude to her repeatedly for raising me, for her love, for Gina's future dreams, for the plans with Steve, and for our old age. She didn't speak, but her eyes smiled gently and sometimes nodded. While talking to her, I remembered a visit to my father-in-law before his death. He had thought about divorcing my mother-in-law, but didn't want to trouble his son and his wife. He asked me to sell the house and put my mother-in-law in a nursing home after his death. That's when he told me about her spending habits. Her attitude changed when Steve started kindergarten, living in a wealthy area, feeling pressure to keep up with rich neighbors. She deluded herself into thinking she was wealthy too, possibly fueled by Steve's success in a famous company. I regretted not putting her in a nursing home sooner. It could have prevented the theft of my mother's money. Steve and Gina arrived in time for my mother's final moments, but only my sister and her husband were there at the end. When we returned home to prepare for the funeral, my mother-in-law was out. I decided to show her the last bit of kindness. We held a small funeral for my mother without her presence. I tried calling her, but she was out and never answered. When I returned home after the funeral, everything was quiet as if she had stayed out overnight. Then, my mother-in-law returned in a good mood. "My condolences for your loss. It must have been hard," she greeted me. I noticed a shiny new jewel in her hand that I had never seen before. "Oh, this look, isn't it beautiful?" "A pink diamond. It cost $50,000. How did you get that, Mother?" I asked. She replied, "I bought it, of course. Debbie introduced me to the store. It's a reservation-only place in New York City, so I went for an overnight stay with my friends. The hotel we stayed at, and the meals were wonderful." To my astonishment, my mother-in-law indulged in luxuries during my mother's funeral, enjoying an overnight trip to New York with friends. I was left speechless with disbelief. I bought something even more expensive than what Debbie showed me. "Feels good, Mother," my mother-in-law declared. I couldn't comprehend how she obtained such an expensive item. "You don't have that kind of money. How did you get it?" I questioned. Nonchalantly, she replied, "Oh, I found it in Steve's room safe. My passbook was in there with exactly $50,000. Since it's in my passbook, it's my money, right?" I felt frozen and disappointed by her actions during my mother's funeral, although, in all honesty, her behavior was somewhat expected. It was confirmed that she had entered our room upstairs. The passbook was in the safe of the study room that Steve now uses. The safe was an old dial type, and Steve, finding it tedious to turn the dial, left it unlocked, thinking the study was locked anyway. On the day my mother passed away, I intentionally left the study unlocked, suspecting that she might take the opportunity to enter our room and take the passbook from the safe. That $50,000 is from my father's inheritance. Do you understand what that means?" I asked her. Unperturbed, she replied, I know it's my money left by your father. So what's wrong with using it? I began to feel pity for my mother-in-law. Sure, it's your money and you're free to use it. But that was meant for your old age. We'll be moving out, so please manage on your own from now on. At first, my mother-in-law looked confused, but she slowly turned pale as she understood my words. Wait, isn't there a separate fund for the nursing home? It's more than this amount, right? She inquired. I explained, yes, there was more, but it decreased due to the inflated funeral costs of my father-in-law and your monthly requests for more allowance from Steve. Feeling the need to illustrate the alternatives, I handed her brochures of lovely nursing homes I had collected over several months. She looked at them speechless and shaking. At that moment, Steve and Gina came down from upstairs. I had reported to them after opening the study, so they had come to check. Steve, initially skeptical that his mother had stolen the money, had no complaints about what I did. While I would have properly arranged for my mother-in-law's nursing home if nothing had happened, her intrusion into our room and the theft of the money prompted me to protect my family. I had made it clear that entering our room and touching the money was unacceptable. I decided to sever ties with her for life. Steve, you'll stay in this house, right? It's sad to sell a house filled with memories, but taking care of parents is a son's duty. I desperately clung to Steve. Checking the safe, I realized she had taken more than the passbook, the cash I withdrew for the car inspection too. That's too much. I trusted you, Steve, I said, shocked by her actions. Struggling to speak, Steve admitted, Oh, I have it. Just borrowed a bit. It was $11,000. But that wasn't all. What about Hillary's mother's money? I demanded. Panicking, she replied. Oh, I'll return that too. Then it's fine, right, Hillary? You'll forgive me now, won't you? She hastily handed me the money, possibly pretending about the $50,000 ring. Until the end, there were no words of apology about my mother's money. I'm sorry, but I can't live with you anymore. I'll protect my own family from now on, I declared. She broke down crying, clinging to Steve till the end. However, Steve's grief-stricken anger was intense, and he acted quickly. He sold her belongings to create a lump sum and found a nursing home affordable on her pension. The chosen home, though, was far from the family home. I probably won't see her again in my lifetime. Steve occasionally gets calls from the home, and she seems calmer now, possibly settling into her new environment. I regretted not placing her in a home earlier. Perhaps if we hadn't lived in that house, her life might have been happier. A part of me felt a little sympathy for her. After she left, we moved, waiting for Gina's graduation. Gina got into her desired university and started living on her own. The family home, being in a popular area, quickly found a buyer. Steve is now applying for a transfer to a branch near the sea. We plan to spend a few years until retirement there, searching for our final home. We hope to continue living peacefully and harmoniously as a family. Mom, what's that over there? When I returned home from my parents' house with my daughter, we were met with piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. As we approached, I realized that these bags contained my daughter's and my belongings, carelessly packed as if they were actual trash. Confused, I exclaimed, "What's this? Why is this happening?" My daughter tearfully pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from one of the bags and hugged it tightly. Frustrated, I marched towards the entrance, only to find that the locks had been changed while we were out. It became apparent that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were behind this. Ringing the doorbell and knocking several times yielded no response. "What is this? Isn't it terrible?" I muttered. Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note that read, "Parasites disappear, never come back." A surge of anger welled up within me, and I couldn't help but express my frustration aloud. "The real parasites are you," I muttered. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not only me, but making my daughter feel this way too was unbearable. My patience exhausted, boiling with anger, I loaded our belongings into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again, I declared. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. My name is Sarah. I am currently 43 years old. I live with my husband, daughter, and my husband's mother and sister. I can't say we live happily. I work from home, but this house is never peaceful. The issue lies with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. They have disliked and ignored me for over 10 years. As my daughter, Tracy, grew up, it bothered me less and less. I mainly work as a personal consultant. I started as a fortune teller, but as my blog became popular, I began receiving more consultations on attracting customers, leading to my current job. I met my husband, Kent, through a friend's introduction when I was training to be a fortune teller. I work in sales at a pharmaceutical company, and I'd also do affiliate marketing as a side job, which is finally starting to take off. Kent gave me enthusiastic advice on attracting customers when I expressed my struggles with fortune telling. Attracted by his kindness, we started dating and got married a year later. At that time, our income wasn't great, but Kent always supported me. I'm so glad I married Kent. I truly felt this way. Living with my in-laws began about a year after I got married. It started when my father-in-law, who had been healthy until then, suddenly passed away. My mother-in-law felt insecure about the future and asked my husband to live with us. We agreed to live together in exchange for her taking care of the household chores. Initially, my mother-in-law welcomed our living together and was happy. I hoped we would get along well, but I was mistaken. 2 months later, she began completely ignoring me, perhaps dissatisfied with me not helping with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law, Diane, also started ignoring me. I didn't mind being ignored, but the challenging aspect with my mother-in-law was her tendency to involve others. Not only did Diane, my sister-in-law, hear about it, but even neighbors and relatives were informed that my daughter-in-law stays at home, but says she's working, leaving all the housework to me. If I say even a little, she talks back 100-fold, so I just ignore her. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law would suggest to others, "You better not talk to her too. It'll be troublesome." As a result, people around the in-laws' house began giving me only tepid responses to my greetings. I felt isolated, and it became very difficult. Despite my pleas to stop spreading strange rumors, my words were completely ignored. Although my mother-in-law's attitude softened slightly when my daughter Tracy was born 2 years after we started living together, her overall stance towards me hardly changed. However, she was very fond of Tracy, and having her help with household chores and child care was a huge relief as my work became busier. Around the same time, my husband Kent's side business started to struggle, and he seemed unable to adapt to changes in the affiliate marketing market. He approached me saying, "Sarah, can you increase your contribution to the monthly expenses a bit?" I agreed, expressing that my consultations were increasing, and the new methods I implemented were working well. Despite my willingness to collaborate on ways to boost his sales, Kent insisted on handling it independently, saying, "I think I'll try it on my own. I'm really sorry." From the beginning of our marriage, we had agreed that Kent would manage the household finances. Initially, my income was low, so he allowed me to contribute more when my sales increased. I transferred money to Kent based on my monthly earnings, and he provided a fixed amount for living expenses in cash. Initially, I could only contribute $100, but now I could transfer up to $1,000, though not every month. I could contribute more if I dipped into savings. I knew Kent was struggling with his side business, but his pride prevented him from consulting me. He began spending more time at cafes after work, returning home later and later. When Tracy was about 5, Diane got married and moved out. Since she lived nearby, she often brought her son Ricky to our house during the day. When Ricky turned 1, Diane expressed her intention to start a part-time job. My mother-in-law gladly offered to take care of him until the evening. Diane was appreciative, saying, "Thank you, I'm so happy." However, as my mother-in-law began caring for Ricky at home, she became very fond of her grandson and started being cold towards Tracy. When they fought, My mother-in-law would scold Tracy, comparing her unfavorably to Ricky. Over time, Tracy started playing near me and began to dislike my mother-in-law's behavior. I spoke up, saying, "Talk to your mother. Tracy and Ricky are both her grandchildren. She should treat them the same. Tracy is already a big sister in elementary school." However, my mother-in-law's focus shifted, and she approached me saying, "Things are tough at the company right now. We might not get bonuses, so could you contribute a bit more?" Despite the challenges, my blog's client attraction was successful, and I started receiving more consultations as a consultant, earning far more than I did as a fortune teller. When Kent requested additional financial support, I responded, "I'm already contributing $2,000 a month. Isn't that enough?" "Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, but my salary has decreased and the side business isn't going well." "Don't be secretive. We're a couple. We should support each other in tough times." "I'm really ashamed." "Thank you." Later, the amount I contributed gradually increased, and eventually I was transferring $4,000 a month to Kent. Still not wanting to hurt his pride, I let Kent continue to manage the finances. When Tracy was in 6th grade, Diane came back home with Ricky. It seems Diane got divorced due to her infidelity, but I don't know the details. By this time, Tracy could help around the house, so household chores were divided among each family, being ignored by my mother-in-law, and Diane continued, but it no longer bothered me. It's unfortunate that I couldn't give Tracy her own room when she started middle school, as Diane's return meant we ran out of rooms. One night, while discussing which tutoring school Tracy should attend for middle school, Diane suddenly said, "Hey, tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Tracy study by herself? Could you stop making such comments? I'm paying for the tutoring, so it's none of your business what Sarah's paying." "Impossible. You don't earn anything. Kent said he's supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Ha ha, you married him because he has money, right?" "Exactly. Kent told me not to speak ill of Sarah, who can turn, but that's just shameless." My mind was filled with questions. What does this mean? What has Kent been telling his mother and the others? Kent is the one supporting this house financially. It's about time we put an end to the parasite's lifestyle. I feel bad for Tracy, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to pay my compensation. Not be able to pay? Are you saying our house is paying for your compensation, Diane? Kent said he would pay for it. You should spend your money on Ricky. I began to understand the deception and felt my anger rising. My husband had always managed our household finances, and my mother-in-law had taken care of the household chores and child care until Tracy grew up. So I thought they knew I was also contributing to the household expenses. Is Kent bearing all the expenses of this house, including your living expenses and the compensation Diane is supposed to pay? Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the only outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It really makes me angry. I contribute money too. Don't talk back. What you contribute is barely enough for your own food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant. I could feel my body trembling with anger. I could see Tracy on the side, looking like she might cry. I knew Kent had a lot of pride, but I never thought it would be this bad. Certainly, in the beginning, Kent was paying for the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Diane, but I had started contributing as well, and now we were living on my income. I needed to talk to Kent properly. Around midnight, Kent came home. He was drunk and seemed cheerful. "Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Diane. They said you're covering all the expenses of this house." About that. My bad. It's a matter of pride as a man, you know. When we started living together, I was paying for everything. There wasn't a right moment to say you were also paying, and in front of the family, let me be the eldest son a little, please. Kent, with a light-hearted tone like in a comedy sketch, put his hands together. "Oh, that's right. I'm going to come in this Saturday. I'll be gone for a week. Take care. Come in." Why? I got invited to a seminar in Conan by a friend I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Sarah. Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow. My husband lay down on the mat in a cheerful mood and soon started snoring. My anger wouldn't subside, but recently, with Kent coming home late, we hadn't talked much, and I had no idea about this. I thought he was joking while drunk, but on the weekend, Kent really left with a large suitcase. During Kent's absence, I had the freedom to use the car, so I decided to take Tracy back to my parents' house. The next day, a shocking event awaited us. Mom, what is that? When Tracy and I returned from my parents' house, there were piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. Upon closer inspection, these bags contained mine and Tracy's belongings, carelessly packed just like real trash. What is this? Why is this happening? I don't understand. Tracy, crying, pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from the bag and hugged it. Furious, I headed towards the entrance. Huh? Has the lock changed? It seemed that the locks had been changed while we were out. This must be the work of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but no one came out. What is this? Isn't it terrible? Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note saying, "Parasites disappear, never come back." I felt a surge of anger from the bottom of my heart. The real parasites are you. I couldn't help but let out a swear word. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not just me, but making my daughter feel this way too. I finally lost my patience with boiling anger. I loaded the luggage into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. When we returned to my parents' house, they were shocked. I hadn't told them about the ignoring from my in-laws, the money issues, and most of all, their attitude towards Tracy. Not wanting to worry them, my parents said, "There's no need to go back to that house. You should claim compensation from them." They cried with anger and told me to stay with them. My mother's words, "You really had it tough," made me cry too. In reality, I had been trying my best all this time. Enough is enough. I finally decided to confront my feelings while staying at my parents' house. I contacted a friend who had introduced me to Kent. She was connected to Kent's side business friends. "Are you doing well? I want to ask you something. Do you know if Kent's friends are currently in Conan, that famous entrepreneur seminar, right? I was invited but wasn't interested, so I declined." "Kent didn't go, did he?" "Yeah, that's right. By the way, I heard Kent quit his job and is now managing a business with his wife. You two must be close." Yes, that's right." Nonchalantly, I replied and hung up immediately. After I called Kent's company, what my friend said was true, and to my surprise, Kent had quit his job 2 years ago. This meant that for the past 2 years, I had been paying almost all of the living expenses for my in-laws. Looking back over the years, I suddenly felt hollow. A week later, I received a laid-back message from Kent saying he was back in the U.S. After continuously ignoring him, I stopped hearing from him altogether. He must have heard the news back home. Expecting persistent contact from Kent, I hired a detective to investigate him. The investigation revealed that Kent, dressed in a suit in the morning, spent his afternoons gambling and evenings at a woman's house. So I asked for an investigation into his infidelity as well. 3 weeks later, Kent called me. It must have been close to his former company's payday, and he was panicking. "Sarah, sorry I couldn't contact you. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I was thinking, why did it come to this? Really? Did you tell the truth to your mother and Diane?" Kent quickly changed the subject and said something unbelievable. "Let's leave that house and live in a new home, just the 3 of us. I'll cut ties with those who disregard you, Sarah. I'm ready to abandon my mother and Diane, so please come back." Are you really cutting ties with your mother and Diane? Was Kent planning to easily discard them after making them dependent on him? I was disappointed in Kent and his self-centered actions, so I told him, I'm coming back for now, so leave the door unlocked. Kent seemed delayed at my message. A few days later, I returned to my in-laws' house with Tracy. Kent, his mother, and Diane were there, but Ricky was nowhere to be seen. I was relieved that Ricky didn't have to witness the adults' ugly arguments. When Kent made some remarks, I ignored the displeased pair and took out a divorce form from my bag. I confronted the surprised Kent. I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, does that mean the $4,000 I've been transferring every month was actually your salary? Kent tried to excuse himself. No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, right? So, I decided to quit before getting fired. Carly, I heard you quit 2 years ago, right? I called your company, and it's still not bankrupt. Kent fell silent. I pressed further. By the way, what role do you play in our joint business management? Are you the accountant? Kent became increasingly uneasy and started sweating. Kent is supporting the whole family, isn't he, Mother? He quit his job, his side business isn't going well, and yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from. I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Kent. My mother-in-law and Diane's faces turned pale and ashen. But the other day on the phone, you were crying and begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. Haha, but that won't happen. I'm also discarding Kent here. What do you mean? I don't understand. Kent hasn't been going to work. That's a lie. He leaves in a suit, and Sarah was supporting the household. It's true. Sarah has been paying for everything for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you guys kicked Sarah out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary. What do you mean by that? You were planning to abandon us, weren't you? Kent's response ignited the fury of my mother-in-law and Diane. As the three of them caused a commotion, Tracy and I began to take action. I came to pick up some forgotten items. I took the cleaning robot bought within the last 6 months, an expensive microwave favored by my mother-in-law, and the beauty device Diane had gotten from Kent. Wait, that's mine. This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it. Diane fell silent at my words. Then I searched for and gathered my belongings from their rooms. The belongings they had put out did not include my expensive brand bags and accessories. Why are you taking that too? This is mine. I ignored their complaints and sweet talk. Finally, I dropped a bombshell on Kent. Oh, I forgot. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress, Mary, too. Tell her it's no use running away. What? How do you know about her? I know you went to Conan with Mary recently. Good for you, right? Of course, I have all the evidence of the affair, so no escaping that. No way. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 2 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Tracy, and oh, you were secretly paying Diane's compensation too. I'll be claiming that back as well. As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Diane desperately tried to stop me. I was wrong, Sarah. I'm sorry. We just believed what Ken said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us. I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right? I couldn't help but laugh at their foolish faces. They finally realized who had been supporting their lifestyle, realizing too late that their non-blood-related support was gone. Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home. Yes, that's right. Kent, you'll be hearing from the lawyer soon. Please take care of it. Leaving a dejected Kent behind, we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce with Kent was finalized, and I demanded compensation through a lawyer. I received numerous apologies and pleas for reconciliation from my mother-in-law and Diane, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Ken's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their own angered me again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough for the compensation, and ultimately, they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. Naturally, this included the compensation I had been paying for Diane. After selling the house, I don't know what became of Ken's family. I hope Ken can take care of his family, but ultimately, he will choose his path. I also claimed compensation from Ken's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Kent was unemployed, and I had been supporting the family. Kent had deceived her, claiming he was an entrepreneur with a successful business. In the end, they broke up after an argument. Tracy and I moved to an apartment, and I was able to give her the room she had longed for. I don't think my 15 years were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision when I started being ignored. Now, I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place. Hey, aren't you going to contribute more around the house? If you're going to be that kind of wife, maybe you should just leave. I sat there, stunned by my mother-in-law's harsh words. Her cold, intense gaze bore into me. Francisco has us, and we don't need you anymore. You always look tired and seem to accomplish nothing, chimed in my unhelpful sister-in-law with a dismissive tone. This is too much, Francisco. Don't you think your mother and sister are going overboard? I pleaded. I'm doing my best too. When I sought help from my husband, he responded with a demeaning attitude. I agree with my mother and sister, Francisco interjected. I'm busy with work, and it's becoming a problem if you don't help with the chores. Besides, my relationship with the new part-time girl is progressing, and you're just baggage. Can you quickly pack and live somewhere else? Shocked by Francisco's words, I glanced at the three of them. They all seemed to blame me. A surge of rage welled up in my chest. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and said, I understand. I need some time. My in-laws, who had once relied on me, were now falling apart. My name is Michelle, and I'm 32 years old. I work diligently, both at my job and in household chores. While it's not uncommon for women to continue working after marriage, I truly love my job and strive to succeed in the company I joined right after college. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my husband, Francisco, approached with a pleading look. Michelle, can you take care of this? He handed me a file crammed with receipts and bills. You should manage the cafe's finances properly. I smiled and responded, sorry, but I'm really bad at that. I met Francisco while he was working part-time at a cafe I frequented. After a few chats, we began dating and eventually talked about marriage. Now, Francisco owns the cafe, but despite his ability to run the business, he struggles with paperwork and always asks me to handle the accounting. As I sighed, my mother-in-law added, Michelle, I suddenly feel like eating Chinese food tonight. Could you rinse the rice well? Also, Mia and the kids are coming this weekend, so we need to plan their meals. Sure, I got it. I nodded to my mother-in-law's request and hurriedly left the house. Before marriage, I was excited about my new life with Francisco. However, he suggested, my mom's lonely by herself. Why don't we all live together in our big house? So now I reside with his mother. To put it lightly, she's not proficient in household chores. When we moved in, the house was a bit of a mess. After my father-in-law passed away, she started living on a pension, which she mostly spends on dining out or ordering food. Francisco seems to believe that housework is a woman's job, making it my full responsibility. Francisco's sister, Nia, occasionally brings her kids home, and each time she does, my to-do list grows. I can't help but think that yet another chaotic weekend is approaching. Weekends, which should be precious times for recovering from the usual exhaustion, turn into moments where my sister-in-law's children ask to play or complain about being hungry. I find myself not only preparing meals in the kitchen, but also entertaining the children. Then, my sister-in-law drops a bombshell. Michelle, I'm getting divorced, and we'll be moving back here with the kids next month. I'm surprised, and for a moment, I'm lost for words. Really? Do you have something to say? She asks. No, I was just thinking. It must have been hard. When are you moving? I want to move as soon as possible. Surprised that my sister-in-law and her children will be moving in, I hope that maybe she will help, and household chores will become more manageable. While we had a normal relationship, I anticipate that this change might bring us closer and result in her contributing to the chores. Despite my positive attitude, reality has other plans. Perhaps because she grew up with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law appears to live a life devoid of housework. She spends most of her time lounging on the sofa, watching TV, and always has some snack with her. Observing her, I realize her neglect of housework might have contributed to her divorce. Now, with the added responsibility of preparing meals for her children and making lunches for kindergarten, my workload increases, and my free time diminishes. I had hoped for her assistance, but it's disappointing that it turns out to be a swing and a miss. Then, there comes a time when my work at the company suddenly becomes hectic. Every day, I start work early, do overtime, and return home exhausted to find the room overflowing with things, with no space to even walk. Seeing this scene each day, waves of fatigue wash over me. On top of that, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complain, asking if dinner is ready yet or why I'm home so late. When I struggle to manage household chores, they coldly remark, "Michelle, there's a mountain of laundry waiting. Don't slack off just because you're busy." I internally protest, "Mother-in-law, I'm really trying my best." But before my sister-in-law can say anything, I frequently opted to keep my thoughts to myself. "Michelle, are you standing up to your mother-in-law? That's a bit bold. But for the sake of the children, please try a little harder to make homemade meals," suggested my sister-in-law. I couldn't help but respond, "If you have so much free time at home, why don't you help out once in a while?" While doing household chores, I overheard Francisco's sister saying, "Haha, Francisco owns a store, so Michelle doesn't need to work, right? If that's the case, maybe you should try a little harder at home." Behind their words, I felt the mounting pressure that I should be doing more. That night, at the peak of my stress, I decided to speak my mind to Francisco. "I've been so busy lately, and neither your mother nor your sister is helping out with household chores. It's really hard." "Michelle, you're not speaking ill of our family, are you?" Francisco's eyes sharpened a bit, and I braced myself. "That's not what I mean, but it's hard for me to do everything by myself. If you helped out once in a while, things would be a little easier for me. I'm busy managing the store. It's different from a regular job. Housework is the wife's responsibility, right?" Even though disappointed by his response, I sat and pondered. A good idea suddenly popped into my head, and I silently pumped my fist. I immediately grabbed my smartphone, opened my favorite online shop, and started adding necessary items to the cart. After completing the purchase, I went to bed satisfied. A few days later, my new electronic household appliances, which would become my lifelines, were delivered to our home. The latest washing machine, a cleaning robot that reaches every corner of the room, and a rice cooker that cooks delicious rice without much effort. Each of them was a savior, making my daily life just a little bit easier and more enjoyable. While setting up the new washing machine, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law suddenly appeared with surprised expressions. "Wait, Michelle, you got such a fancy washing machine, but the old one was still good, wasn't it?" Smiling gently, I replied, "The old one took a bit too long, and I heard this new one shortens the laundry time." Their gaze then shifted to the cleaning robot and the new kitchen appliances. "See, I've also upgraded these," I said, showing them off a bit. "All these things, cleaning robots and convenient cooking appliances." "Michelle, come over here for a moment," my mother-in-law said inside the room. Seeing the slightly surprised expressions of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I smirked to myself. Francisco sat next to me, and the four of us began our discussion. "Why did you buy so many things?" My mother-in-law raised her voice. "Do you really need all these new appliances? Isn't it just because you want to make things a bit easier?" she continued. "Well, I thought it would be nice if things around the house could run a bit more smoothly," I replied with a slightly troubled expression. But my mother-in-law chimed in, Relying too much on machines, aren't we? The sister-in-law waved her hand, but I responded, the appliances we had can still be used. Francisco is working hard managing his store. Maybe you should be more frugal. Francisco nodded in agreement with his sister, and in a quiet voice I murmured, maybe you're right. There was a hint of anger in my mother-in-law's eyes, and I stumbled over my words. Are you even considering our household? I really am, but I'm just a bit exhausted, I replied. My mother-in-law raised her voice, exclaiming, enough. I can't believe you're our daughter-in-law. My sister-in-law, with a disgusted look, added, I'll watch over Francisco. We don't need someone like you here. When I looked at Francisco, he said coldly, I understand what Mom and Sis are saying. It's a bit difficult to have a wife who doesn't do housework. Looking at Francisco's face, my heart felt heavy. He continued with a cold smile. I have my own store, so I decide how to use my money. But being with someone who spends on anything and everything might be difficult. I was shaken by his words, but I looked into Francisco's eyes and counted to 10. He added with a hint of cruelty. Also, I've noticed things have been going well with that new part-time girl. She's more attractive than you are now. Maybe it's time for you to pack up and find a new place to live. A fire of anger surged within me, though I didn't voice it. Taking a step back and calming myself, I replied after a deep breath, all right. I'll look for a new home. That's better. Finally, you understand. I'll feel much better without you around, he said smugly. Francisco signed the divorce papers that night, and I moved to a nearby weekly rental apartment with just the bare essentials and the divorce paper. No one tried to stop me when I left. Did they ever really care about me? After submitting the divorce papers at the city office, I found a stylish apartment to start fresh. During this time, an unexpected opportunity came my way. A promotion I had been putting off because of my family situation. I seized this chance and began working as a section manager. Every day, as I dedicated myself entirely to my job, I felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. In the midst of these busy days, my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was my former mother-in-law. I thought we had nothing to do with each other anymore, right? Without checking her message, I swiped to dismiss the call. My new life had begun, and I wouldn't look back at the past. A year flew by. One weekend, as I was relaxing in my room, listening to my favorite music, my phone rang again. To my surprise, it was my former mother-in-law. Wondering what she wanted after all this time, I picked up. Hello, is something wrong, Michelle? I finally got through. I didn't think you would answer after so many calls. Well, it's been a while. What's going on? I asked. She hesitated for a moment and then asked, how's your new life? Despite her probing tone, I replied cheerfully, it's great. I love my new apartment, and work is going smoothly. I even got promoted and am living freely. That's good, Michelle. Can you come back home? I was taken aback and blurted out, why? We're struggling financially. I thought to myself, I knew it, and responded cautiously. Francisco's cafe only makes about $1,000 a month, right? If no one else in the family works, things could be tough. You knew about that? She asked. Yes, Francisco's cafe wasn't doing well. I was fully aware of its financial situation since I handled all the accounting. But he pretended to be the successful owner without understanding the real state of his business. It was almost laughable how oblivious he was. I handled all the finances and procurement, so of course. I sensed her shock. You knew and didn't tell us? We had no idea you were doing so well in such a big company, or that you were contributing so much to the household expenses. My former mother-in-law exclaimed. I admitted, yes, I contributed more than $3,000 every month. Thanks to that, you all managed. The truth was, I used my salary to bridge the gap in Francisco's business losses. He seemed completely unaware of the situation, and after I left, it seemed reality hit hard. Michelle, can you please come back? She asked. Curious, I inquired. So how's Francisco's cafe doing now? She sighed. We might have to close soon, and the part-time workers keep quitting. With an inward smirk, I commented on his slightly sloppy management style. It's hard to keep it going for long, isn't it? His little bit of pride doesn't help. Not doing proper work. I mean, how many women out there do you think would be willing to support a guy like that? My former mother-in-law was momentarily at a loss for words. I continued somewhat sarcastically. Wait, I'm a bit busy now. Since you left, the house is a mess. It's chaotic with things everywhere. Confused? I asked. Wait, what do you mean? She described the disarray of their home with belongings scattered everywhere, looking like a storeroom. Without anyone to cook, they were eating out, which was costing a lot. The washing machine broke down, and it seemed like there's no room in the budget to buy a new one. Actually, the appliances that you took back, I was really relying on them, my former mother-in-law admitted. Puzzled, I asked, Huh? Why is that? Those were for my convenience. Besides, I bought them myself, so it's okay for me to take them back, right? She reluctantly agreed, Yeah, I guess so. But I never realized housework was this challenging. With a firm tone, my former mother-in-law added, With 3 adults in the house, how can it be that hard? What are Francisco and your daughter doing? A hint of fatigue could be heard in her voice. As for Francisco, his staff members have been quitting, and sales have plummeted. As soon as he found out, he became really downcast and has just been lazing around at home. But Francisco used to spend his money from the store without any restraint, right? On top of that, Mia doesn't help at all. She doesn't do anything around the house and even gets her allowance from me. To be honest, living on just my pension for the 3 of us is really hard, she continued. I responded with a hint of sarcasm. Ah, Mia once told me that I was unnecessary because she was there. My former mother-in-law desperately said, Michelle, we're really in trouble. Living on just my pension for the 3 of us is quite tough. I firmly stated, I have no intention of returning to that house. It must be hard living with all that baggage. She seemed to be at a loss for words. Seeing her like this made me feel a bit sorry for her. But as I was about to hang up, my former mother-in-law seemed eager to say something. Michelle, I'm really sorry. Can you reconsider? Her voice sounded a bit exhausted. I replied, I wonder if we can ever spend days together with smiles again. Huh? Was it that hard without me? I asked with a mix of surprise and calmness. After a short pause, my former mother-in-law took a deep breath. Yes, there's actually an issue with the property tax. We might have to let go of the house. I said, I see, but I really don't want to get involved anymore. Decide what you're going to do with your family. I hung up without waiting for her next words. After that, I set it up so I wouldn't receive any more calls from her. In my room, holding my favorite mug filled with aromatic coffee, I enjoyed my time alone, looking at the outside scenery. A smile spontaneously appeared on my face. A few months later, when I passed by the cafe where Francisco used to work, I noticed the place was now quiet and empty. Recalling its past liveliness, I felt a bit nostalgic. It seems they really closed the shop. While walking around the old town, I became curious about my former in-law's house and saw a sold sign. Coincidentally, I bumped into an old neighbor in town. According to her, those 3 had quickly sold their house and moved to a small apartment nearby. In their new home, there were always loud arguments and even the smell of garbage. It seems the neighbors are quite bothered, and it has become a bit of local gossip. I thought, it must be tough for them, but with a bit of effort, life can change. I wondered why they don't try. As I gazed at the old house, these thoughts wandered in my mind. A lot has happened to me since then, but I'm living each day to the fullest. In fact, a handsome guy from my workplace confessed, saying, I really admire your hardworking nature. Now we're enjoying our dates, and I'm really looking forward to what the future holds. If I get married again, I really want to be happy. I'm feeling very excited about it now. Oh, indeed? Is it true that you've acquired a house? If so, I'd be interested in living with you. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law started uttering such an absurd proposition over the phone She must have caught wind of our recent home purchase from my husband. I could discern my sister-in-law's amused chuckles in the background. Does she believe her laughter can go unnoticed? Honestly, I have no desire to reside with my mother-in-law and the others. I thought my husband shared the same sentiment. However, the fact that they've been informed about our new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll be living together? The idea that my beloved husband might be in cahoots with them fills me with a bit of apprehension. Yet, I have no intention of yielding to their wishes. Are they trying to manipulate me? If that's their game, I'll reverse the roles. Reflecting on all my past tribulations, I pledged revenge against them. I am Kate Thompson, 30 years old, working as an ordinary employee at a major financial corporation. I married my husband Joe 3 years ago. And though we don't have children yet, there's a valid reason for that. A decision we both took seriously. Joe and I are fully committed to our careers, toiling daily with the aim of advancing. Once our professional lives stabilize, we plan to build our own home and create a stable environment for raising children. We've agreed to revisit the topic of having kids once our careers settle down. This was a decision we made earnestly, sharing our genuine feelings and thoughts. We do aspire to have children eventually, and now, as we prepare for that, I find myself recalling all my past struggles. Then, one day, I successfully executed a well-planned project at work, and my promotion was officially confirmed. While my salary was already sufficient, the promotion brought even more comfort to our lives. On the other hand, Joe, although not promoted, received a substantial salary increase due to his years of service. With both our incomes on the rise, I felt it was time to turn our long-held dream into reality. So I broached the topic with Joe. Joe, I want to talk to you. Over the past year, both of us have had stable incomes. I think it might be time to consider getting our own home. What do you think? Oh, is it time already? From his excited voice, I could tell Joe was thrilled. Actually, I've been thinking about it too. But since I haven't been promoted yet, I felt a bit hesitant to bring it up. Don't worry about that. It's not like only one of us needs to earn money. I was thinking it might be okay to build our home in my name. Really? Well, you do earn more now. If you're okay with it, let's build our home in your name. All right, let's proceed with that. Let's go see some model houses on our next day off. Sounds great. Let's go. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. I really feel grateful for choosing Joe at times like this, as we share the same values. The following week, we made an appointment to view model homes as planned. We looked at various types of houses, expanding our vision for our own home. On weekends, we began creating simple floor plans together, researching online. During a recent visit to a construction company, they suggested that instead of leaving everything to them, it's better if we create our own image for a more satisfying home. So Joe and I started building that image. However, neither of us has much knowledge of architecture or design. Even with research, it takes time to put it into practice. While taking breaks, we continued working, and then the doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there. Unexpectedly, Mother, what brings you here so suddenly like this? My mother-in-law sometimes visits our place without notice. She glared at me and, without a word, took off her shoes and went into the house on her own. I'm here, Joe. Mom, what's up? Surprised by his mother's call, Joe showed a startled reaction. Did you have some business around here? To Joe's question, his mother looked a bit perplexed. Yes, I told Kate about it over the phone a little while ago, but it seems Joe didn't know. I see. Maybe Kate forgot to tell me. Seems like it. Kate, even though she's still young, has a terrible memory. That's not true, Mom. It's not forgetfulness. Kate is incredibly busy with work, and at the same time, she takes care of the household. Her mind is always full of things to do. You're such a kind boy, Joe. If your late father were here, he definitely wouldn't have forgiven that. I really respect Kate from the bottom of my heart. So, Mom, why did you come here today? To Joe's question, his mother smiled contentedly. Then, she slowly took out a travel brochure from her bag, spread a page with a post-it note on the table, and showed it. "Listen, Joe. I've always wanted to go to Niagara Falls. Won't you take me, please?" My mother-in-law began to say such things excitedly out of the blue. Caught off guard by the sudden request, both Joe and I were left staring at her, mouths agape. My mother-in-law, relentless, kept pressing Joe, who was clearly flustered. "Come on, Joe, you agree, right? Think of it as a way to show filial piety." "Wait a minute, Mom. I'm in trouble if you suddenly say you want to go on a trip, though you can come too. Actually, I was thinking of going with Claire, but if Joe wants to go, I'm delighted to turn it into a family trip. Claire is Joe's sister." "What are you talking about? Kate is here, and I can't get time off from work. But it's strange for me to pay for a trip for you and my sister, right?" "Not strange at all. Spending money for the family is a wonderful thing. Don't you think so, Kate?" Suddenly turning to me, my mother-in-law sought my agreement. Though shaken, I firmly expressed my opinion to her. "Well, using one's own money for family isn't bad, but I think imposing it on others is different." "What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm trying to extort travel expenses from Joe?" "I didn't mean to say it in such a harsh way, but listening to you, it sounded like you just wanted us to pay for the trip, Kate. That's terrible. I had no such intention, but you're making me out to be the villain in front of Joe. I'm so shocked." "That's not. I didn't mean to call you a villain. I just answered honestly to what was asked." Okay, no need for excuses, Kate. Why are you so heartless? You must not like me, do you?" My mother-in-law, visibly upset, glared at me with icy cold eyes. It always turns out like this when she comes over. She always finds some reason to demand money and then squanders it with Claire, Joe's sister. Spending money for the family sounds nice, but what my mother-in-law does is practically extortion. The situation is entirely different when Joe gives them money out of kindness. No matter that they're family, I never really liked Joe's brazen mother and sister. According to Joe, his mother and sister became so selfish after his father passed away. Joe's father died when he was in high school, and since then, they have lived as a trio. While his strict father was alive, he watched over the finances. But with his departure, there was no one to stop them, and they even freely spent the life insurance money. Also, since Claire works part-time, not as a full-time employee, her salary is low, and their life is always on the edge. So this is why she regularly visits our house, making excuses like life is tough, or I want to relax and travel somewhere to extort money from Joe. Before marrying Joe, it seemed he was at the mercy of his mother and her demands after his father's death. A sense of dependence for being cared for by his mother had bound Joe. However, since marrying me, Joe seems to be gradually realizing their true nature. Even when repeatedly asked for money, recently he's been trying hard to refuse. For Joe, that's quite a growth. Moreover, he has recently become able to speak back firmly to his mother. To my mother-in-law's spiteful words like, "You don't like me, do you?" Or "Why should I for such an uncharming daughter-in-law?" Joe responded clearly, "Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can speak badly of Kate. Didn't Kate just answer what you asked her, Mom? You're taking Kate's side. What are you talking about?" "I think you're in the wrong here, Mom. That's so unfair. Surely Kate must have poisoned your mind against me. Poor thing, you were such a kind child before we got married." "I'm telling you that's not it. I'm saying this because I think so." Joe's firm response surprised my mother-in-law, who was not used to being talked back to like that. With a frustrated look, biting her lower lip, she said, "Fine," and left. "Kate, I'm sorry. I'd always make you feel uncomfortable." "No, it's okay. You stood up for us this time. Once we build our own home, we'll be further away. Let's not interact with Mom and them." "Then yeah, that would be a relief. If you're okay with it, Joe, I'm grateful." The place we are considering for our new home is quite far from our current apartment, improving the convenience to both of our workplaces. Our current apartment is about 5 train stations away from Joe's parental home, but the new house will be 3 times farther and require transfers. The route from the station is also complex, so if we don't give them the address, they won't be able to find our new home. It's a good chance to cleanly break off our relationship with my mother-in-law. Later, we submitted our imagined floor plan to the construction company, and the construction started 2 months later. After about half a year, our $500,000 dream home was completed. We managed to squeeze some time from our busy work schedules to pack a few days before the move. I received a call from my mother-in-law on my smartphone. Busy packing. I turned on the speaker and answered the phone. "Hello," I said, and my mother-in-law started speaking in an unusually high-pitched voice. "Kate, when are you moving? You bought a house, right? I want to live with you." Suddenly, on the phone, my mother-in-law began to say such an outrageous thing. She must have heard about our new home purchase from Joe. I could hear Claire, my sister-in-law, chuckling in the background. "That's great. We can make Kate work for us every day. Mom, you came up with a good idea." Do they think their words aren't reaching me? It's clear they plan to piggyback on our move. I imagine them planning to use me for an easy life. Honestly, I have no intention of living with them. I thought Joe felt the same, but telling them about the new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll live together? The thought that my beloved Joe might be in league with them fills me with a bit of fear. But I have no intention of letting them have their way. They're probably trying to use me, right? If that's the case, I'll turn it around and use them. I told them the date of our move. Then my mother-in-law and Claire said, "We'll come to the apartment in the afternoon on that day. Take us with you in the car, and arrange the movers for us too." They hung up after making their demands. But of course, I have no intention of complying. For now, I'll check the facts with Joe. As I was about to go and tell Joe this, he was already standing behind me. "Joe, you were there. I came to say we should take a break, but was that Mom on the phone just now?" "Ah, yes. I was going to talk to you about it too." "Why did you tell your mother about our new home?" "It's not like that. Actually, when Mom came over last time, she seems to have seen the floor plan of our new house. She kept pestering me about it every day. So I just..." "Kate, I'm really sorry." "I see. So you don't intend to live with your mother, right?" "Of course not. After hearing that phone call, I'm even thinking it's better to cut ties with her." Joe's expression was filled with more anger than ever. It was the first time I had seen him this angry. From what Joe told me, my mother-in-law had seen the layout of our new home and was convinced it was a spacious house. She had pretended to be interested and called Joe repeatedly, asking him about the number of rooms and details of the facilities. But it seems that Joe is on my side, which relieved me. Then there's no problem at all. This made me determined to get my revenge on my mother-in-law. I've had enough of her saying whatever she wants, but it's goodbye to that now. I'll make sure to settle this properly. And so the day of the move arrived. Joe and I had the movers transport our things in the morning and headed to our new home in our car. By the time we finished moving everything, it was already past 1:00 p.m., checking our phones while taking a break. We saw dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. "She called me too," Joe said, sounding weary. Then my mother-in-law called again. I answered the phone with the speaker still on. Hello, Kate. Where are you? I told you I'd be at the apartment in the afternoon, didn't I?" Yes, you did say that. So what can I do for you?" "What do you mean? You didn't arrange for the movers. I've been waiting at home, and not a single truck has shown up. So I had to go to your apartment myself." "Is that so? Well, that's too bad. You know I didn't arrange for any movers." "What? That's not the agreement. Where is your new house?" "Huh? You really think I'd tell you?" After saying that clearly, my mother-in-law uttered a dumbfounded "huh." She probably thought that as long as Joe was there, she could always have her way. But Joe is different now. He's my precious ally, trying to cut off the bad ties with his family. Determined to release all my pent-up feelings, I spoke firmly. "Just to let you know, neither Joe nor I have any intention of living with the two of you from now on. Please don't involve yourselves in our lives." "What are you saying? Your opinion doesn't matter. It's up to Joe to decide." At least tell me where the new house is right now. Huh? How are you going to get here without even knowing the address? This house is in my name. I have the right to decide who lives here. If you two just barge in, it's trespassing, and I'll sue you right away. What? Trespassing? How rude to say that about your husband's family. At that point, Joe spoke up in a deathly cold voice. Family? My father, who was a family member, is already gone, isn't he? What are you saying, Joe? After hearing that last phone call, I'm utterly fed up with you two. Just having a blood relation with you is embarrassing. From now on, my family is only Dad and Kate. I no longer consider you two as my family. Wait, Joe, don't say such things. Don't bother us again, got it? With that, Joe hung up without waiting for her reply. He swiftly set his phone to block her calls. Hey, Joe, are you really okay with this? Yeah, I finally realized that Mom was just using me to her advantage. I feel completely relieved now. Joe looked truly refreshed, sincerely believing what he said. That's how we, as a couple, managed to cut off the bad ties with my mother-in-law and sister. Afterwards, they had to change their lifestyle drastically, as Joe stopped supporting them completely. Without any contact with Joe, they lost their fallback option. Later on, my sister-in-law's part-time income wasn't enough, and my mother-in-law had to start working part-time as well. Being a housewife for so long, she wasn't used to the working environment and was clumsy, often being disliked at her workplace. Meanwhile, we live a peaceful life in our new home, with no sudden visits from my mother-in-law anymore. We are truly stress-free. I'm endlessly grateful to Joe for believing in me and cutting ties with his toxic blood relatives. We might face various challenges in the future, but even then, I trust Joe, and we will support each other and walk through life together.